Jonathan Whitmore pressed his hand over his son's mouth to muffle the weak cries. The sedative should have kept the infant silent, but the dose wasn't strong enough. He looked around the dark garden, making sure no one was watching, then lowered the wooden box into the shallow hole. His 3-month-old son lay inside, drugged, barely conscious, still breathing. Jonathan picked up the shovel. He didn't hesitate. The first scoop of dirt hit the wood with a hollow thud. Then another, and another. He worked quickly, efficiently, like a man completing a task on his to-do list. When the hole was filled, he planted 3 rose bushes on top, pressing them into the fresh soil with his bare hands. Perfect. Untraceable. By morning, Victoria would wake up confused and terrified. By next week, she would be in prison. By next month, he would control everything. Jonathan brushed the dirt from his Italian leather shoes and walked back toward the mansion. He pulled out his phone and typed a message. "It's done, she won't remember anything. Bracelet is in the box." He pressed send without looking back. Behind him, beneath 3 feet of California soil, his infant son was slowly running out of air. Before we continue, I want to know where you are watching from. What city? What time is it there? Drop it in the comments because I love seeing how far these stories reach. Hit that subscribe button right now and stay with me until the very end. I promise you what comes next will shake you to your core. This is a story of pure evil, unimaginable courage, and the woman nobody ever noticed who brought down a monster. Elena Vasquez had cleaned the Whitmore mansion every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday for 5 years, 3 months, and 11 days. She knew this because she counted everything. Counting kept her focused. Counting kept her invisible. And invisible meant safe. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Her alarm rang at 4:45 a.m. She made coffee in the dark, careful not to wake her daughter Maria, who was sleeping in the next room. She ate a piece of toast, standing at the kitchen counter, staring at nothing. Thinking about nothing. At 5:30, she caught the first bus from East Los Angeles toward Pacific Palisades. The ride took 47 minutes. She had counted. Elena got off 3 blocks from the Whitmore estate and walked the rest, past the iron gates of mansions that cost more than she would earn in 10 lifetimes, past gardeners who nodded at her without speaking, past security guards who looked through her like she was made of glass. She reached the Whitmore gate at exactly 600 a.m. It was open. Elena stopped. Her hand froze on the iron bars. In 5 years, she had never seen this gate open before 7. Mr. Whitmore was obsessive about security. He had cameras everywhere, motion sensors, a system that cost more than her entire apartment building. But the gate was open, swinging slightly in the morning breeze. Elena's stomach twisted. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones the way her mother used to feel, storms coming before the first cloud appeared. She walked through anyway. The front door was unlocked. Elena pushed it open and stepped inside. The marble foyer gleamed in the early morning light. Everything looked perfect. Everything looked normal. But the silence was wrong. This wasn't peaceful morning silence. This was the silence of something broken. "Hello?" Elena called out. Her voice echoed off the walls. "Mr. Whitmore? Mrs. Whitmore? Is anyone home?" A sound came from somewhere deeper in the house. A low, terrible sound, like an animal dying. Elena ran toward it. She found Victoria Whitmore on the floor of the living room. The woman was still in her silk nightgown, her blonde hair tangled and wild, her eyes red and swollen and completely empty. She was clutching a blue baby blanket against her chest, rocking back and forth, making that awful sound. "Mrs. Whitmore!" Elena dropped to her knees beside her. "What happened? Are you hurt? Where's Lucas?" Victoria looked up. Her face was a mask of pure horror. "Gone." The word came out like a death rattle. "My baby is gone. Someone took him. Someone came in the night and took my baby. I woke up and his crib was empty. He was just gone. He was just gone." Elena felt the world tilt sideways. Lucas, 3 months old, soft brown eyes and tiny fingers that grabbed at everything. She had held him once, just once, when Victoria had shoved him into her arms to answer a phone call. He had looked up at her and smiled, toothless and perfect and trusting. "I'm calling 911. Elena pulled out her phone. "Jonathan already called." Victoria's voice cracked like thin ice. "He's upstairs, on the phone with the police. They're coming. Everyone is coming, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because he's gone. My baby is gone, and I can't remember anything. I can't remember anything from last night. Why can't I remember?" Heavy footsteps pounded down the stairs. Jonathan Whitmore appeared, phone pressed against his ear, his face arranged in perfect anguish. He was already dressed in a crisp white shirt and pressed slacks, not a hair out of place. Elena noticed this. At 6 a.m. after his infant son had vanished, Jonathan Whitmore had taken time to dress impeccably. Yes, I understand, Jonathan said into the phone. We'll cooperate fully, whatever it takes, just find my son. He hung up and looked at Elena. Something flickered in his eyes. Just for a moment. Annoyance? Calculation. Then it was gone. Elena, good. Stay here today. The police will have questions for everyone. Of course, Mr. Whitmore. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to help. Jonathan nodded curtly and walked past her toward his wife. But he didn't touch Victoria, didn't comfort her, didn't kneel beside her or hold her hand. He just stood there looking down at her with an expression Elena couldn't read. Victoria, you need to pull yourself together. The police will be here any minute. FBI too, probably. We need to present a united front. Victoria looked up at her husband with red, swollen eyes. How can you be so calm? Our son is missing. Our baby is missing. How are you so calm? Because falling apart won't bring him back. Jonathan's voice was cold. Get up. Get dressed. We have a long day ahead of us. He walked away without another word. Elena watched him go. Something cold settled in her stomach. She had worked in houses like this for 20 years. She knew the difference between shock and performance. She knew what real grief looked like. Jonathan Whitmore wasn't grieving. Jonathan Whitmore was managing. The police arrived within minutes. Then more police. Then FBI agents in dark suits with hard eyes and notepads. Then news van satellite dishes rising like mechanical flowers outside the gates. The Whitmore mansion transformed into a command center. Officers swarmed every room. Dogs sniffed at doorways and corners. Technicians dusted for fingerprints on surfaces Elena had polished just 2 days before. Elena stood in the kitchen, invisible as always, making coffee that nobody thanked her for watching everything. Around 10 o'clock, a detective approached her. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many terrible things. His badge read Detective Marcus Cole. Miss Vasquez, I need to ask you some questions. Yes, of course. How long have you worked for the Whitmores? 5 years. Were you here yesterday? No, I work Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, sometimes extra if there's an event. When did you last see the baby? Elena thought carefully. Saturday afternoon, around 3 o'clock. Mrs. Whitmore was feeding him in the nursery. How did he seem anything unusual? He seemed fine, healthy, happy. He smiled at me when I walked past. Detective Cole wrote something in his notebook. And the Whitmores? How did they seem on Saturday? Elena hesitated. This was the moment. The choice. Tell the truth or stay invisible. They seemed fine. The lie tasted like copper in her mouth. No arguments, no tension, nothing out of the ordinary. Nothing I noticed? Cole studied her face for a long moment. Elena kept her expression neutral, her eyes steady. 20 years of practice. Thank you, Miss Vasquez. If you think of anything else, call this number. He handed her a card. Anything at all. Elena took the card. Her hand was trembling slightly. She hoped he didn't notice. Detective, can I ask you something? Cole paused. Go ahead. Do you think you'll find him, the baby? Cole's expression softened just slightly. We're doing everything we can, Miss Vasquez. That's all I can tell you. He walked away. Elena watched him go and felt something crack inside her chest. She had lied to a police officer. She had lied about a missing baby. But what could she have said? That she sometimes heard the Whitmores arguing behind closed doors. That Jonathan's smile never reached his eyes. That Victoria had seemed smaller every week, like something was slowly crushing her. None of that would help find Lucas. None of that was evidence of anything. Elena spent the rest of the day cleaning rooms that didn't need cleaning, staying out of the way, watching. That was her real skill. Not scrubbing floors or polishing silver. Watching. People said things in front of the help. They forgot she was there. They revealed things they would never reveal to equals. Around 2 o'clock, she was dusting a bookshelf near Jonathan's study when she heard his voice through the partially open door. The insurance paperwork is already filed. I submitted it this morning. Elena froze. Insurance paperwork. The baby had been missing for less than 12 hours. Another voice responded. A woman's voice, but not Victoria's. Someone on speakerphone. And the trust restructuring. Have you spoken to the lawyers? That can wait until after Victoria is dealt with. You're certain this will work? There can't be any loose ends, Jonathan. There are no loose ends. I've planned every detail. Victoria's medication has been adjusted for weeks. She won't remember anything clearly. Her fingerprints are on everything. By the end of the week, she'll be in custody and I'll have control of the estate. Elena's blood turned to ice. She pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. What about the baby? A pause. When Jonathan spoke again, his voice was completely flat. "The baby is no longer a concern." Elena's hand flew to her mouth. She bit down on her fingers to keep from screaming. "Are you certain if they find him before—" "They won't find him. I chose the location carefully, and even if they did find him, all the evidence points to Victoria. Her bracelet is in the box. Her medication is in his system. The case builds itself." Elena's legs buckled. She grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. Her mind was screaming, but her body wouldn't move. The baby, Lucas, in a box, buried somewhere on this property, while his mother sat in the living room drugged and confused, about to take the blame for her husband's crime. "I have to go," Jonathan said. "The FBI wants another interview. Keep me updated on the insurance claim." Elena heard footsteps approaching the door. She forced herself to move, walking quickly down the hallway, dust rag in hand, invisible, invisible, invisible. She didn't look back. At 6 p.m., the police finally began to leave. The FBI set up a tip line. News crews packed up their equipment, though a few vans remained outside the gates, waiting for developments. Elena gathered her things slowly, her hands shaking so badly she could barely zip her bag. "Elena!" She spun around. Jonathan was standing in the kitchen doorway, watching her. "Yes, Mr. Whitmore." "Thank you for staying today. I know it wasn't easy." "Of course. I just wish I could do more." Jonathan walked closer. Elena fought the urge to back away. "The police will be here again tomorrow. More questions, more searching." He paused. "You've worked here a long time, Elena. You know this house almost as well as we do." "I suppose I do. If you see anything unusual, anything at all, I want you to tell me first, before you talk to the police." His eyes locked onto hers. "Do you understand?" Elena's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I understand, Mr. Whitmore." "Good." He smiled, but his eyes stayed cold. "I knew I could count on you." He walked away. Elena stood frozen in the kitchen, her mind racing. He knows. He suspects something. "He's warning me." She grabbed her bag and walked out the back door, forcing herself not to run. She made it to the bus stop 3 blocks away before her legs gave out completely. She sat on the bench, gasping for air, staring at Detective Cole's card in her trembling hand. "Call him. Tell him everything. Save that baby." But another voice whispered in her head. The survival voice. The voice that had kept her alive through the desert crossing 20 years ago, through 3 days of walking with no water, through burying her sister in the Arizona sand. Evidence. You need evidence. Without evidence, you're nothing. They'll believe him over you. They always believe people like him over people like you. Elena put the card in her pocket. Tomorrow. She would go back tomorrow. She would find proof. She would save that child. But first, she needed a plan. The bus came. Elena climbed aboard on legs that felt like water. She sat in the back, staring out the window at the mansions growing smaller in the distance. She thought about Lucas, about his soft brown eyes and his toothless smile, about the way he had grabbed her finger and held on tight like she was the most important thing in the world. She thought about her sister Rosa, 17 years old, dying of heat stroke in the Arizona desert because Elena couldn't carry her anymore. She thought about all the times in her life when she had stayed silent, stayed invisible, stayed safe while terrible things happened around her. Not this time. Not again. Not with a baby's life at stake. Elena made herself a promise. Whatever it took, whatever the cost, she would find Lucas Whitmore. She would bring down the monster who had buried him alive. Or she would die trying. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in her narrow bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Maria's soft breathing in the next room. Her daughter was 16 now. Beautiful and smart and dreaming of becoming a doctor, dreams that cost money Elena didn't have. If she went to the police with what she'd heard, what would happen? Jonathan had money, lawyers, connections. He would destroy her. He would dig into her past, her immigration status, her family. He would find ways to make her disappear, and Lucas would still be dead. But if she stayed silent, Lucas would definitely die, alone, in the dark, running out of air while his mother sat in a prison cell for a crime she didn't commit. Elena got out of bed. She walked to the window and looked out at the city lights spreading across the horizon. 20 years ago, she had crossed the border with her mother and her sister Rosa. They had paid a coyote $2,000, everything they had, for the promise of safe passage. Instead, they got 3 days of walking through desert hell, no water, no shade, no mercy. On the 3rd day, Rosa collapsed. 17 years old, beautiful and full of dreams, and she just stopped walking. Elena had tried to carry her, but she wasn't strong enough. She watched her sister die under the Arizona sun, watched the life drain out of her eyes, watched her dreams evaporate into the burning air. They buried Rosa in that desert. A shallow grave marked with stones, that would scatter in the first wind. And Elena had made a vow. Never again. Never again would she stand by while someone died because she was too afraid to act. She had broken that vow 100 times since. Small deaths, little betrayals, looking away when she should have looked closer, staying silent when she should have screamed. But not this time. Elena walked to her closet and pulled out a box she kept hidden in the back. Inside was everything she owned that mattered. Her mother's rosary, Rosa's quinceañera photo, an envelope containing $3,000 in cash saved over 15 years for emergencies, and a set of lockpicks she had learned to use in another life before she came to America, when survival meant skills that polite people didn't talk about. Tomorrow she would go back to the mansion. She would find proof. She would save Lucas Whitmore, but first she needed to understand what she was dealing with. Elena pulled out her phone and started searching. Jonathan Whitmore. Whitmore Properties. Financial records. Lawsuits. The articles loaded slowly on her old phone. She read for hours, piecing together a picture that made her sick. Jonathan's real estate empire was crumbling. He had borrowed money from investors, made promises he couldn't keep, built developments that never got finished. Now the lawsuits were piling up. Fraud allegations, criminal investigations. But there was more. Victoria came from old money. Her father had been an oil baron who died 5 years ago, leaving everything in a trust for his grandchildren. Jonathan couldn't touch the principal. He could only access the income, and only as long as he stayed married to Victoria. But if Victoria went to prison, the trust would be restructured. As Lucas's sole guardian, Jonathan would gain control of everything. And then Elena found something that made her blood freeze. 3 months before Lucas was born, Jonathan had taken out a life insurance policy on his unborn son. $5 million, payable to Jonathan Whitmore alone. Elena stared at the screen. The pieces were falling into place with horrible precision. Jonathan had married Victoria for her money. When that money became unreachable, he created a new plan. Kill the baby, collect the insurance frame, the wife controlled the trust. All his problems solved at once. Except he had made one mistake. He had talked about it while a cleaning lady was listening. Elena looked at the clock. 3:47 a.m. In a few hours she would go back to that mansion. She would search Jonathan's study. She would find the evidence that proved what he had done, and she would bring that monster down. The morning sun was just starting to light the sky when Elena arrived at the Whitmore estate. She had come early before the police returned, before the news crews woke up, before anyone would notice a cleaning lady slipping through the back gate. The service entrance was unlocked as always. Nobody ever thought to secure the servant's door. Elena moved through the garden quickly, her heart pounding. She was almost to the house when something made her stop. The rose bushes. 3 new rose bushes planted in a perfect row near the back wall. The soil around them was dark and fresh, recently disturbed. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Those bushes weren't there on Saturday. She was certain. She knew this garden like she knew her own face. Every plant, every stone, every shadow. Someone had planted new roses. Someone had turned the earth. No, Elena whispered. Please, no. She dropped to her knees beside the bushes. The soil was soft, loose, easy to dig. She pressed her ear against the ground. Nothing. She shifted position, pressing harder. Still nothing. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe Jonathan had just decided to plant new roses. Maybe she had misunderstood the conversation. Maybe... Then she heard it. A sound so faint she thought at first it was her own heartbeat. A weak, muffled cry coming from beneath the earth. Elena started digging. Her nails tore against the soil. Dirt packed under her fingernails, mixing with blood as she scraped and clawed at the ground. Rose thorns ripped her arms, but she didn't feel the pain. She couldn't feel anything except the desperate primal need to reach that sound before it stopped. "Hold on, baby," she gasped. "Hold on, I'm coming. Her fingers hit wood. A box, rough planks nailed together hastily, buried maybe 18 inches deep. Elena screamed. She didn't mean to. The sound ripped out of her throat like something being born. She grabbed the planks and pulled with everything she had. The wood splintered, her palms shredded. Blood ran down her wrists. One board came loose, then another, then enough to see inside. Lucas Whitmore lay in the box wrapped in a dirty blanket. His face was gray, his lips were blue, his eyes were closed, but his tiny chest was moving, up and down, shallow and weak, but moving. He was alive. Elena pulled him from the ground. She held him against her chest, feeling his weak heartbeat against her own. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the dirt and blood. "I've got you, baby. I've got you. You're safe now. You're safe." She ran toward the house Lucas clutched in her arms. "Help someone, help me! I found him, the baby is alive!" Lights exploded throughout the mansion, doors slammed, voices shouted. Jonathan Whitmore burst through the back door, still in his robe, his face a mask of perfect shock. But Elena saw his eyes. In that first unguarded moment before the performance kicked in, she saw what flickered behind them. Not relief, not joy, not the desperate hope of a father seeing his child pulled from death. Fear. Pure cold fear. The fear of a man watching his perfect plan unravel. Victoria appeared behind him, stumbling, barely conscious, still drugged from whatever Jonathan had been putting in her food. When she saw Lucas in Elena's arms, she let out a sound that wasn't quite human. "My baby, oh God, my baby, is he alive? Please tell me he's alive." "He's alive," Elena's voice broke. "He's weak, but he's alive. We need to call 911, now." Jonathan was already reaching for his phone, his face rearranging itself into appropriate expressions. Shock, relief, gratitude. He was good. He was very, very good. "Yes, I need an ambulance immediately. My son was found. He was buried in our garden. He's alive but barely breathing. Please hurry." He hung up and moved toward Elena, arms outstretched. "Give him to me. Let me hold my son." Elena stepped back instinctively. "We shouldn't move him too much. The paramedics will be here soon." Something flickered in Jonathan's eyes. Annoyance, suspicion, but he masked it quickly. "Of course, you're right." He turned to Victoria, who had collapsed against the doorframe, sobbing. "Victoria, get dressed. The police will be here soon. We need to be ready." Victoria wasn't listening. She was staring at Lucas, at the dirt on his face, at his blue lips and gray skin. "Who did this?" she whispered. "Who would do this to our baby?" Jonathan put his arm around her, guiding her toward the house. "We'll find out, darling. I promise. We'll find out who did this, and they'll pay." He looked back at Elena over his shoulder. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Elena knew that Jonathan Whitmore understood exactly what had happened. The cleaning lady had ruined everything, and he was already planning what to do about it. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. Paramedics rushed across the garden, their equipment clattering, their voices urgent and professional. "Ma'am, we need to take him now." Elena handed Lucas to the paramedics. Her arms felt empty without his weight. She watched them work, checking his vitals, placing a tiny oxygen mask over his face, wrapping him in warming blankets. "He's stable," one of the paramedics said. "Barely, but stable. He's lucky to be alive." Lucky? Elena almost laughed. Luck had nothing to do with it. Lucas was alive because she had heard a conversation she wasn't supposed to hear, because she had come early and seen freshly planted roses, because she had dropped to her knees in the dirt and refused to give up. Luck was for people who didn't have to fight for every breath. The police arrived next, then more FBI agents, then Detective Cole, his face grim, his eyes sharp. "Miss Vasquez, I need you to tell me exactly what happened, every detail." Elena told him almost everything, about arriving early, about noticing the new rose bushes, about hearing the cry from beneath the ground, about digging with her bare hands until she found the box. She did not tell him about the conversation she overheard, not yet, not without proof. Cole wrote everything down. Then he looked at her hands, still bleeding, covered in dirt. "That was incredibly brave, Miss Vasquez. You saved that baby's life. Anyone would have done the same." "No." Cole's voice was quiet but firm. "They wouldn't have. Most people would have walked past. Most people would have assumed it was nothing. Most people would have stayed out of it." He paused. "You're not most people." Elena didn't know what to say to that, so she said nothing. The paramedics loaded Lucas into the ambulance. Victoria climbed in with him, her face tear-streaked, her hands reaching for her son. Jonathan stayed behind. "I need to talk to the police," he said. "I need to understand how this happened, how someone could have done this right under our noses." His voice was perfect. Concerned father, outraged protector, innocent victim. But Elena saw the way his eyes kept moving, calculating, planning, looking for the angle. Cole interviewed everyone, the gardeners, the security guards, the household staff. Elena watched from the kitchen, making coffee no one would drink invisible as always. Around noon, Cole approached her again. "Miss Vasquez, I need to ask you something else." "Yes." "Did you see anyone in the garden this morning before you found the baby? Any footprints? Any sign that someone had been there recently?" Elena shook her head. "I was focused on the roses, on the soil. I wasn't looking for anything else." Cole nodded slowly. "The crime scene techs found something interesting. The rose bushes were planted sometime in the last 48 hours. But there are no fingerprints on the box, no DNA evidence. Whoever did this was very careful." "What does that mean?" It means this wasn't random. This wasn't some stranger who broke in. This was someone who knew the property, someone who had time to plan, someone who had access. Elena felt her heart pounding. You think it was someone in the house? Cole's expression was unreadable. I think we need to look at everyone, Miss Vasquez. Everyone who had access. Everyone who might have had a motive. He walked away. Elena stood frozen in the kitchen, Cole's words echoing in her head. Everyone who might have had a motive. Jonathan had motive. Jonathan had access. Jonathan had planned the whole thing. But how could she prove it? That evening, Elena was gathering her things to leave when she heard her name. Elena! She turned. Victoria Whitmore was standing in the hallway, still wearing the clothes she had put on for the hospital. Her face was pale and exhausted, but her eyes were clear. Mrs. Whitmore, how is Lucas stable? The doctors say he'll be okay. They're keeping him overnight for observation, but he's going to be okay. Victoria's voice cracked. Because of you. My son is alive because of you. I just happened to notice the roses. Anyone would have... Stop. Victoria stepped closer. Her eyes were intense, almost fierce. Stop saying anyone would have done it. No one else did. Only you. You saved my baby Elena. I will never forget that. Never. Elena didn't know how to respond. In 5 years, Victoria Whitmore had barely looked at her, had barely acknowledged she existed, and now she was looking at Elena like she was the most important person in the world. Can I talk to you? Victoria glanced down the hallway. Privately. Of course. Victoria led her to a small sitting room off the main hall. She closed the door and turned to face Elena. Something is wrong with my husband. Elena's breath caught. What do you mean? I mean, something is wrong. He's been acting strange for months. Distant. Secretive. He disappears into his study for hours. He's been adjusting my medication without telling me I'm sure of it. I've been so confused lately, so foggy. I can barely remember anything from the last few weeks. Victoria's hands were shaking. She clasped them together to make them stop. And the night Lucas disappeared, I don't remember anything, nothing at all. I took my medication and went to sleep, and the next thing I knew it was morning and my baby was gone. That's not normal, Elena. Something is very wrong. Elena's mind was racing. Victoria suspected. She didn't know the truth yet, but she was close. Mrs. Whitmore, have you told the police any of this? Victoria shook her head quickly. I can't. If I'm wrong, I'll destroy my marriage. If I'm right... She trailed off, her eyes filling with tears. If I'm right, then my husband tried to kill our son, and I can't process that. I can't believe that. I need to be wrong. What if you're not wrong? Victoria looked at her. Really looked at her, maybe for the first time ever. Then I need someone to help me find out the truth. Someone who sees things. Someone who notices what other people miss. She paused. Will you help me, Elena? Will you help me find out what really happened to my son? Elena thought about the conversation she had overheard, about the insurance policy, about the carefully planned frame job. She thought about Jonathan's cold voice saying the baby is no longer a concern. She thought about Lucas in that box running out of air, waiting for someone to find him. Yes, Elena said. I'll help you. Victoria grabbed her hands. Thank you, Elena. I know I've never really seen you before. Never treated you like a real person. I'm sorry for that. I'm so sorry. You don't need to apologize. Yes, I do. Victoria's grip tightened. You saved my son's life. You're risking everything to help me, and I don't even know anything about you. I don't know where you're from, or if you have a family, or what your life is like outside this house. I've been so blind, so wrapped up in my own world. Elena thought about Maria, about her mother back in Mexico, too old to make the crossing again, about the sister she had buried in the Arizona desert 20 years ago. I have a daughter, she said quietly. Maria, she's 16. She wants to be a doctor. Victoria smiled through her tears. A doctor? That's wonderful. She's everything to me. Everything I do is for her. Then you understand. Victoria's voice was fierce. You understand what I would do to protect my child, what I would sacrifice, what I would risk. Yes, I understand. They stood there for a moment, two mothers connected by something deeper than class or money or circumstance. Then Victoria's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her expression changed. It's Jonathan. He's on his way home from the police station. She looked at Elena urgently. We can't let him know we talked. He can't know I suspect anything." "I understand. Come back tomorrow. I'll try to get access to his study. There might be something there, some evidence of what he's planning." Elena nodded. "I'll be here at 6. She left through the back door, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. Victoria was an ally now. They would work together. They would find the evidence. But as Elena walked toward the bus stop, a black SUV pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. Jonathan Whitmore was behind the wheel. "Elena, get in. I'll give you a ride home." Elena's blood froze. "That's not necessary, Mr. Whitmore. The bus is fine." "I insist." His voice was pleasant, but his eyes were cold. "After everything you did today, it's the least I can do." Elena looked around. The street was empty. No witnesses, no one to see if something happened. She had no choice. She got in the car. Jonathan pulled away from the curb. For a long moment he didn't speak, just drove his hands loose on the wheel, his expression unreadable. "You found my son," he said finally. "You saved his life." "I was in the right place at the right time." "Yes, you were." He glanced at her. "It's interesting, isn't it, how you happened to be in the garden so early, how you happened to notice those particular rose bushes, how you happened to hear a sound that no one else heard." Elena's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "I've worked in your garden for 5 years, Mr. Whitmore. I notice things." "Yes." Jonathan's voice was soft, almost gentle. "I'm beginning to understand that." He turned onto a side street. Elena didn't recognize the neighborhood. They were going the wrong direction. "Mr. Whitmore, my apartment is the other way." "I know. I just want to talk for a moment, privately." Elena's hand moved slowly toward the door handle. "The police are going to investigate everyone," Jonathan continued. "Everyone who had access to the property, everyone who might have had a motive. They're going to dig into backgrounds, immigration status, financial records, everything." He looked at her again. This time there was no pretense in his eyes. "You've been in this country for 20 years, Elena. 20 years of hard work, building a life, raising a daughter. It would be a shame if something disrupted all of that." Elena understood. The threat was clear. "What do you want, Mr. Whitmore?" "I want you to remember what you are." His voice was ice. "You're a cleaning lady. You clean floors. You wash dishes. You are invisible, and invisible people don't see things. They don't hear things. They don't know things." He paused. "Do you understand?" Elena looked at him. At his perfect suit and perfect hair and perfect mask. At the monster hiding behind the expensive facade. She thought about Lucas in that box, about Victoria drugged and confused, about all the people Jonathan Whitmore had destroyed to get what he wanted, and she made a choice. "I understand, Mr. Whitmore." "Good." He smiled. "I knew I could count on you." He turned the car around and drove her home in silence. When they reached her building, Elena got out without a word. "See you tomorrow, Elena." Jonathan's voice floated after her. "Bright and early." The car pulled away. Elena stood on the sidewalk watching until the taillights disappeared. Then she pulled out her phone and called Detective Cole. "Miss Vasquez, is everything all right?" "No," Elena said. "Everything is not all right. I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you this morning." She told him everything. The conversation she overheard, the insurance policy, the financial troubles, Jonathan's threat in the car. When she finished, there was a long silence. "Miss Vasquez, do you understand what you're saying? You're accusing Jonathan Whitmore of attempted murder." "I know what I'm accusing him of." "Without evidence, your word against his, this is going to be very difficult. His lawyers will tear you apart." "I know." "You could lose everything. Your job, your home, your status in this country." "I know." Another pause. Then Cole's voice softened. "Why are you doing this? Why risk everything?" Elena thought about Lucas, about Rosa, about all the times she had stayed silent when she should have screamed. "Because someone has to," she said. "Because if I don't, no one will. Because I can't look at myself in the mirror if I let him get away with this." Cole was quiet for a moment, then he spoke again. "Come to the station tomorrow morning. First thing, we'll take a formal statement. And Miss Vasquez, yes, be careful. Jonathan Whitmore is a dangerous man. If he suspects you've talked to us, there's no telling what he might do." "I'll be careful." Elena hung up. She stood alone on the dark street looking up at the window of her apartment where Maria was probably doing homework, dreaming of medical school, unaware that her mother had just painted a target on their backs. But Elena didn't regret it. For the first time in 20 years, she had stopped being invisible, and she wasn't going to disappear. The next morning, Elena went to the police station as promised. She spent 3 hours giving a formal statement, answering questions, going over every detail of what she had heard and seen. Detective Cole was professional but cautious. "This gives us direction, but we need physical evidence, something that connects Jonathan directly to the crime." "What about the rose bushes, the box?" "No fingerprints, no DNA. Whoever did this wore gloves, was extremely careful." Cole paused. "Too careful for a crime of passion. This was planned, methodical." "So what happens now?" "We investigate. Quietly. We look into Jonathan's finances, his communications, his movements in the days before Lucas disappeared. But it takes time, Miss Vasquez, and without more evidence, we can't make an arrest." Elena felt frustration building in her chest. "Meanwhile, he's free, living in that mansion, planning his next move. I know it's difficult, but if we move too fast, if we tip our hand before we're ready, he'll destroy the evidence and walk away. We need to be smart about this." Elena nodded slowly. Smart, careful, patient, these were not things she had time for, because she knew Jonathan Whitmore. She had watched him for 5 years, and she knew that right now, at this very moment, he was planning how to get rid of her. She left the police station and took the bus to Pacific Palisades. She wasn't scheduled to work today, but she needed to see Victoria. Needed to warn her about what was happening. The Whitmore mansion looked peaceful in the morning light. Perfect white columns, manicured lawns, not a hint of the evil that lurked inside. Elena walked to the service entrance and found it locked. For the first time in 5 years, the servant's door was locked. Her stomach dropped. She walked around to the front gate and pressed the intercom. "Yes." A voice she didn't recognize. Male. Harsh. "This is Elena Vasquez. I work here. I need to see Mrs. Whitmore." "Mrs. Whitmore is not available." "Please, it's important, just for a few minutes." A pause. Then, "Hold on." Elena waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Finally, the gate clicked open. She walked up the long driveway, her heart pounding. A security guard she had never seen before met her at the front door. "Mr. Whitmore wants to see you, in his study." Not Victoria, Jonathan. Elena's blood ran cold, but she had no choice. She followed the guard inside. Jonathan was sitting behind his desk, looking exactly like the successful businessman he pretended to be. Calm, controlled, dangerous. "Elena, please sit down." She remained standing. "I came to see Mrs. Whitmore." "Victoria is resting. The stress of the last few days has been overwhelming. The doctors have increased her medication." He smiled. "For her own good." Elena understood. He was drugging her again, keeping her confused, keeping her compliant. "I'll wait until she's awake." "That won't be possible." Jonathan's smile faded. "In fact, I'm afraid your services are no longer needed, Elena. I've decided to let you go." "You're firing me. I'm protecting you." He stood up, walked around the desk. "The police investigation is intensifying. They're looking at everyone with access to the property. Everyone with opportunity." He stopped inches from her face. "I know you talked to them. I know you made accusations, told them stories about conversations you think you heard." Elena forced herself not to back away. "I told them the truth." "The truth?" Jonathan laughed softly. "The truth is whatever the evidence says. And right now, the evidence says that someone buried my son in the garden. Someone with access to the house. Someone who knew exactly where to dig when she conveniently arrived early that morning." Elena felt the trap closing around her. "You think I did it," she whispered. "I think the police might think you did it, once they start looking closely at your background, your immigration history, your desperate financial situation, your convenient presence at every crucial moment." Jonathan shrugged. "It would make a compelling case." "You're insane. I saved your son." "Did you? Or did you bury him, and then pretend to save him, hoping for a reward, a payout, gratitude from a wealthy family?" He shook his head sadly. "It's a tragic story, really. The cleaning lady who seemed so devoted, so invisible, secretly plotting against the family she served." Elena stared at him. The sheer audacity of it. The coldness. The complete lack of humanity. No one will believe that. "Won't they?" Jonathan moved closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. "I have lawyers who can make anything believable. I have money that can buy witnesses, experts, whatever I need. And you have nothing, no resources, no connections, no power." He reached out and straightened her collar, a gesture that made her skin crawl. Leave now, quietly. Forget everything you think you know. Go back to your little apartment and your little daughter and your little life, and pray that I decide to let you keep it." Elena looked into his eye, saw the monster lurking there, the absolute certainty that he had won. And something inside her broke. Not her spirit, not her resolve, her fear. She had spent 50 years being afraid. Afraid of the border patrol. Afraid of deportation. Afraid of losing her job, her apartment, her daughter's future. Afraid of powerful men who could crush her without a second thought. But Lucas had been buried in a box running out of air, and she had dug him out with her bare hands. She had already done the impossible. She had already won. Jonathan Whitmore had no idea who he was dealing with. "No," Elena said. Jonathan blinked. "What?" "I said no. I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to stay quiet. I'm not going to let you win." Jonathan's expression shifted. Confusion, then anger. "You don't seem to understand your situation." "I understand it perfectly. You buried your own son alive for money. You've been drugging your wife for months. You planned to frame her for murder and steal her family's fortune, and now you're threatening me because I'm the only person who knows the truth." Elena stepped closer. Jonathan actually stepped back. "But here's what you don't understand, Mr. Whitmore. I have nothing to lose. I've already lost everything once. I buried my sister in the desert when I was 25 years old. I've spent 20 years being invisible, being nothing, being nobody. You can't scare me with threats of poverty or deportation or prison. I've faced worse than anything you can imagine." Her voice was steady, clear, strong. "So do your worst. Hire your lawyers, buy your witnesses, make up your stories. I don't care, because I'm going to find the evidence that destroys you. I'm going to expose every lie, every crime, every evil thing you've done, and I'm going to watch them lead you away in handcuffs." Jonathan stared at her. For the first time, something flickered in his eyes that looked almost like fear. "You're making a terrible mistake." "No," Elena smiled. "I'm making the first right decision of my life." She turned and walked out of his study, out of his mansion, out of his world of lies and money and power. Behind her, she heard him pick up his phone. "I need to speak with my lawyer, immediately. We have a problem." Elena kept walking, past the security guards, past the perfect lawns, through the golden gates and out onto the street. Her hands were shaking, her heart was pounding, but she had never felt more alive. The battle was just beginning, and Elena Vasquez was ready to fight. 3 hours after Elena walked out of Jonathan Whitmore's mansion, her phone rang. The number was blocked. She answered anyway. "Miss Vasquez?" Jonathan's voice was ice. "I wanted to give you one last chance to reconsider your position." "My position hasn't changed." "Then you should know that I've just finished a very productive meeting with my legal team. We've prepared a sworn statement for the police. It details how you were seen near the Rose Garden the night Lucas disappeared, how you have a history of mental instability, how you've been stealing from our home for years." "So..." Elena's hand tightened on the phone. "Those are lies. Lies become truth when enough people believe them, and I have a lot of resources for making people believe things." He paused. "I'm also in contact with Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Your documentation is interesting. There seem to be some irregularities that warrant investigation." Elena felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. "Maria. If they came for her, what would happen to Maria? You're a monster." "I'm a survivor, just like you claim to be. The difference is I'm better at it." His voice dropped. "You have until midnight to leave California. After that, I can't guarantee your safety, or your daughter's." The line went dead. Elena stood in the middle of her small kitchen, her hands shaking. He had threatened Maria. He had actually threatened her daughter. For a moment, fear overwhelmed her. She could pack a bag, take Maria, disappear into the vast anonymity of America. Start over somewhere Jonathan Whitmore would never find them. Then she thought about Lucas in that box, about Victoria drugged and confused, about all the victims Jonathan would create if no one stopped him. Elena called Detective Cole. "He just threatened me, threatened my daughter. He's going to ICE. He's going to frame me for the kidnapping." Cole's voice was tense. "Where are you now?" "My apartment." "Stay there. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone. I'm sending a unit to watch your building." "What about Maria? She's at school." "I'll have someone pick her up. Bring her home safely. Just stay calm, Elena. We're not going to let him hurt you." Elena hung up. She wanted to believe Cole. She wanted to trust that the system would protect her. But she had lived in America for 20 years. She knew how the system worked for people like her. Money talked. Power won. And people like Elena got crushed. 45 minutes later, there was a knock at her door. Elena peered through the peephole. 2 men in dark suits. They didn't look like police. Miss Elena Vasquez. One of them held up a badge. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, we need to speak with you. Elena's heart stopped. He had done it. Jonathan had actually done it. She backed away from the door, her mind racing. The fire escape. She could go out the window, down the fire escape, disappear before they could take her. But then what? She would be a fugitive. Maria would be alone. Everything they had built would be gone. Another knock, harder this time. Miss Vasquez, we know you're in there. Please open the door. We just want to talk. Elena closed her eyes, prayed to God, to her mother, to Rosa watching from wherever the dead went, prayed for strength. Then she opened the door. The next 3 hours were the worst of Elena's life. They took her to a federal building downtown, put her in a room with no windows, asked questions for hours. Where was she born? When did she cross the border? Did she have proper documentation? Why were there gaps in her work history? Elena answered everything truthfully. She had nothing to hide. Her green card was real. Her work permits were valid. She had followed every rule, filed every form, paid every fee. But they kept asking, kept probing, kept looking for something to hold against her. Miss Vasquez, are you aware that your employer has filed a criminal complaint against you? Elena's head snapped up. What? Jonathan Whitmore claims you've been stealing from his home. Jewelry, cash. He estimates the value at over $50,000. That's insane. I've never stolen anything in my life. He has witnesses, household staff who saw you taking items from various rooms. They're lying. He's paying them to lie. The agent shrugged. That's not for us to determine. But given the serious nature of the allegations combined with the questions about your documentation, we're going to have to hold you pending further investigation. Hold me, you mean arrest me. Detain you, for your own protection. Elena felt the walls closing in. This was it. Jonathan's plan. Get her locked up. Deport her. Make her disappear. Without her testimony, without her evidence, he would walk free. I want a lawyer. You'll have access to legal representation within 48 hours. I want a lawyer now, and I want to call my daughter. The agent stood up. Processing takes time, Miss Vasquez. I'm sure you understand. They led her to a holding cell. Cold, gray, a metal bench, and a toilet, and nothing else. Elena sat on the bench and tried not to cry, tried not to think about Maria coming home from school to find her mother gone, tried not to think about all the ways Jonathan Whitmore had won. She was still sitting there numb and lost when the cell door opened. Detective Cole walked in. Get up, he said. You're coming with me. Elena stared at him. How? I called in some favors, pointed out that detaining a key witness in an active attempted murder investigation might constitute obstruction of justice. The feds weren't happy, but they agreed to release you into my custody. He held out his hand. Come on, we don't have much time. Elena took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. My daughter, is she safe? She's at the police station, scared but safe. One of my officers has been with her since we picked her up from school. Relief flooded through Elena so intensely she nearly collapsed. Thank you so much. Cole led her through a maze of corridors and out a back entrance where an unmarked car was waiting. Get in. Keep your head down until we're clear of the building. Elena did as she was told. The car pulled away, merging into traffic, disappearing into the vast anonymity of Los Angeles. He's not going to stop, Elena said quietly. Jonathan, he'll keep coming until he destroys me. Probably, Cole's voice was grim, which is why we need to destroy him first. Elena looked at him. How? I've been digging into his finances. There's something there. Something big. Money moving through shell companies. Payments to people who don't seem to exist. But I can't access his personal records without a warrant, and I don't have enough for a judge to sign off. What do you need? Something physical. Documents, a computer, a phone. Something that proves he planned the attack on Lucas. Something that connects him directly to the crime. Elena thought about Jonathan's study. The locked drawer. The papers she had never had a chance to search. I know where to look, but I can't get back in the house. He's got new security. The locks have been changed. Cole was silent for a moment. Then he said something that shocked her. What if you didn't need to break in? What if someone let you in? Who would do that? Cole glanced at her. Victoria Whitmore called me this morning. She wants to help. The police station was chaos when they arrived. Officers moving, phones ringing. But none of it mattered to Elena because the moment she walked through the door, Maria was there running toward her, throwing herself into her mother's arms. Mom, oh God, Mom, I was so scared. They came to my school. They said you were in trouble. They said, I'm okay, mija. I'm okay. I'm right here. Elena held her daughter so tight she was afraid she might break her. 16 years old. Brilliant and beautiful and dreaming of becoming a doctor. And she had almost lost her. Because of one man's greed. Because of one monster's evil. What's happening, Mom? Why are they after you? What did you do? Elena pulled back and looked at her daughter's face. So young, so afraid, so confused. I didn't do anything wrong, Maria, I promise you. There's a bad man who wants to hurt me because I know the truth about something terrible he did. But the police are helping us. We're going to be okay. I don't understand. What truth? What did he do? Elena looked at Cole, who nodded slightly. Do you remember the baby Lucas, the one I found buried in the garden? Maria's eyes went wide. The one on the news? The millionaire's baby. Yes, I found him. I saved his life, but the man who buried him, it was his own father, and now he's trying to destroy me so I can't tell anyone what I know. Maria stared at her mother. Something shifted in her face. The fear was still there, but now there was something else too. Something fierce. Then we fight him. Elena almost laughed, almost cried. Mija, this is dangerous. You should stay here where it's safe while I... No. Maria's voice was steel. You've spent my whole life protecting me. Now it's my turn. Whatever you need to do, I'm helping. Elena looked at her daughter and saw herself. Saw Rosa. Saw every woman in her family who had ever refused to give up, refused to stay down, refused to let the world crush them. Okay, she said. Okay, we fight together. 2 hours later, Elena was back at the Whitmore estate. But this time, she wasn't alone. Victoria was waiting at the service entrance, her face pale but determined. The new security guard takes a break at 9 p.m., 15 minutes. That's your window. Elena nodded. Where's Jonathan? Downtown, meeting with his lawyers. He won't be back until midnight at the earliest. And the staff? I gave them the night off, told them I needed rest. Victoria's voice cracked. I've been pretending to be drugged all day, playing the confused compliant wife. He has no idea I've stopped taking the medication. Elena touched Victoria's arm. This is dangerous. If he finds out... He tried to kill my son. Victoria's eyes burned with a cold fire Elena had never seen before. He drugged me, framed me, made me think I was losing my mind. I don't care about danger anymore. I care about making him pay. The minutes crawled by. At 8:58, the security guard walked toward the main gate for his break. Now, Victoria whispered. Elena slipped through the service entrance and moved quickly across the garden. She didn't look at the rose bushes. Didn't look at the spot where she had dug Lucas from the earth. There would be time for that later. Right now, she had a job to do. She reached the back door. Victoria had left it unlocked. She stepped inside. The mansion was dark and silent. Elena moved through the familiar hallways past the rooms she had cleaned 1,000 times toward Jonathan's study. The door was locked. Of course it was. Elena pulled out her lockpicks. Her hands were trembling, but she forced herself to focus. The first pick slipped into the lock. The second followed. She felt for the pins, testing each one, searching for the weakness. Click. The door swung open. Elena stepped inside and pulled out her phone using the flashlight to scan the room. Desk, file cabinets, bookshelves. Everything looked exactly as she remembered. She went straight for the locked drawer. The one where she had found the receipts before. The one Jonathan had caught her searching. This time she was faster. The lock gave way in seconds. She pulled the drawer open and started photographing everything. Bank statements, contracts, letters. She didn't have time to read them. She just needed to capture as much as possible. Then she found something new. A folder she hadn't seen before. Labeled Contingency. Inside were documents that made her blood freeze. A life insurance policy on Victoria. $2 million. Taken out 3 weeks ago. A medical report from Victoria's psychiatrist. Forged based on the handwriting. Claiming Victoria was suicidal and a danger to herself and others. And a receipt from a pharmacy. For the same sedative that had been found in Lucas's system. Prescribed to Victoria. Filled by Jonathan. He was going to kill her next. Elena photographed everything with shaking hands. This was it. This was the proof. Not just of what he had done to Lucas, but of what he was planning to do to Victoria. She grabbed the burner phone from the back of the drawer, the one with the messages planning the attack. She shoved it in her pocket. Then she heard footsteps in the hallway. Elena's heart stopped. The security guard. His break wasn't supposed to end for another 5 minutes. Had he come back early? Had he seen her enter the house, the footsteps came closer, stopped right outside the study door. Elena looked around frantically. The window. She could escape through the window. She moved toward it, but before she could reach it, the door swung open. Jonathan Whitmore stood in the doorway. "I knew you'd come back." His voice was soft, almost gentle. "I knew you couldn't resist." Elena backed toward the desk. "The police know I'm here. They're watching the house." "No, they're not. I had my lawyers file a restraining order against you this afternoon. Any officer who comes near this property is violating a court order." He stepped into the room. "You're alone, Elena, just like you've always been." "Victoria knows. She let me in. She knows everything." Jonathan laughed. "Victoria, my drugged, confused, mentally unstable wife whose own psychiatrist has declared her unfit to testify. Whatever she told you, whatever she thinks she knows, it won't matter. She's going to have a tragic accident very soon. Depression, the stress of what happened to Lucas. No one will be surprised." Elena felt ice spreading through her veins. He was going to kill Victoria tonight. "You're insane." "I'm practical." Jonathan moved closer. "You know what your problem is, Elena. You think the world is fair. You think if you work hard and tell the truth and do the right thing, good things will happen. But that's not how it works. The world belongs to people like me. People who understand that rules are just suggestions, that money is power, that the only thing that matters is winning." He pulled something from his jacket. A gun. "I really am sorry about this. You were a good cleaner, very thorough. But you saw too much. And people who see too much have to disappear." Elena stared at the gun. After everything, this was how it ended. Shot in a millionaire's study. Her body dumped somewhere no one would ever find it. Maria left alone? Jonathan walking free? No, she had not crossed a desert, had not buried her sister in the Arizona sand, had not spent 20 years surviving in a country that wanted her gone. She had not dug a baby out of his grave with her bare hands just to die here now at the hands of this monster. "You're making a mistake," Elena said. Jonathan smiled. "I don't make mistakes." "You made one tonight." Elena's voice was steady. "You came home early. That wasn't your plan. Something spooked you, made you change your schedule." Jonathan's smile flickered. Just for a second. "Victoria's not really drugged, is she?" Elena continued. "She's been pretending, playing the compliant wife while she gathered evidence against you. And tonight, while you were meeting with your lawyers, she wasn't resting. She was calling the police." Jonathan's face went pale. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" "Check your security cameras, check your phone, see how many calls Victoria made today while you were gone." For a moment, Jonathan hesitated. His gun hand wavered. That moment was enough. Elena grabbed the heavy bronze bookend from the desk and threw it with all her strength. It struck Jonathan's shoulder, spinning him sideways. The gun fired the bullet, slamming into the wall, inches from Elena's head. She didn't wait. She ran through the study door, down the hallway toward the back entrance. Behind her, she heard Jonathan cursing, heard his footsteps pounding after her. She burst through the back door and sprinted across the garden. The service gate was just ahead. 20 feet. 10. A hand grabbed her hair, yanking her backward. She fell hard on the gravel path, the air exploding from her lungs. Jonathan loomed over her, his face twisted with rage. "You stupid woman! You could have walked away. You could have taken my money and disappeared, but you had to be a hero." He raised the gun. Elena closed her eyes. Thought of Maria, thought of Rosa, thought of her mother's face so far away in a country she would never see again. Then she heard sirens. Lots of sirens. Getting closer, getting louder. Jonathan's head snapped toward the sound. Red and blue lights were flashing through the trees coming up the long driveway. "No," he whispered. "No, that's not possible." Elena looked past him and saw Victoria standing on the back patio. She was holding Jonathan's phone in one hand. In the other was a small device that Elena recognized, a recording device. "I've been wearing this all day," Victoria said. Her voice was calm, cold, deadly. "Every conversation, every threat, every confession, it's all recorded, Jonathan, and it's already been uploaded to Detective Cole." Jonathan stared at his wife. For the first time, Elena saw real fear in his eyes. "Victoria, listen to me. Whatever you think you heard. I heard you confess to burying our son alive. I heard you describe how you drugged me to frame me for it. I heard you plan to kill me next." Victoria's voice broke, but she didn't look away. "I trusted you. I loved you. and you destroyed everything." Police cars screeched to a halt in front of the mansion. Officers poured out weapons drawn. Jonathan looked around wildly, searching for escape, but there was nowhere to go. The gates were blocked. The officers were spreading across the property. In seconds, he would be surrounded. He turned back to Elena, still lying on the gravel. The gun was still in his hand. "If I'm going down," he said, "I'm taking you with me." He raised the weapon. 2 shots rang out. Jonathan Whitmore stumbled backward, looking down at his chest in disbelief. Red bloomed across his white shirt. He fell. Elena looked up and saw Detective Cole standing at the corner of the house, his weapon still raised. "Don't move," Cole said, but Jonathan wasn't listening. Jonathan couldn't hear anything anymore. His eyes were open, staring at the sky, seeing nothing. Jonathan Whitmore was dead. Elena lay on the gravel path, her whole body shaking. Victoria collapsed beside her, sobbing. Officers swarmed across the garden, shouting commands, securing the scene. Cole knelt beside Elena. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, couldn't speak, couldn't process what had just happened. "It's over," Cole said quietly. "It's finally over." Elena looked at Victoria, at the tears streaming down her face, at the phone still clutched in her hand. "How did you know?" Elena whispered. "How did you know to record everything?" Victoria wiped her eyes. "You told me to find evidence. I couldn't get into his study, but I could stay close to him. Listen, pretend to be drugged while he talked to his lawyers, his accomplices, his phone." She laughed bitterly. "He never suspected. He was so convinced I was weak, so convinced I was broken." "You were brave," Elena said. "Braver than anyone I've ever known." Victoria shook her head. "You were brave first. You saw the truth when no one else did. You dug my son out of the ground with your bare hands. You refused to give up, even when he threatened everything you had." She reached out and took Elena's hand. "You saved my son, you saved me, and I will spend the rest of my life making sure everyone knows what you did." Elena squeezed her hand. Couldn't speak. Didn't need to. Around them, the chaos continued. Officers photographing the scene, paramedics checking Jonathan's body, voices crackling over radios. But for Elena, the world had gone quiet. The nightmare was ending. The monster was gone. She thought about Maria waiting at the police station, about the phone call she would make in a few minutes, about the words she would say. "It's over, mija. We won. We're safe." She thought about Rosa buried in the Arizona desert 20 years ago, about the promise she had made over that unmarked grave. "I won't let anyone else die because I was too afraid to act." She had kept that promise. Finally, after all these years. Elena Vasquez closed her eyes and let the tears come. Not tears of grief, not tears of fear, tears of victory. The paramedics arrived 7 minutes after the shooting. Elena watched them work on Jonathan's body, their movements mechanical and precise, but she already knew. The way his eyes stared at nothing. The way his chest didn't rise. The way the blood had stopped spreading across his white shirt. Jonathan Whitmore was gone. Detective Cole helped Elena to her feet. Her legs felt like water, but she forced herself to stand, forced herself to breathe, forced herself to believe it was really over. "I need to call my daughter," she said. Cole nodded. "Use my phone. Yours might be needed for evidence." Elena's hands shook as she dialed Maria's number. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. "Hello?" Maria's voice was small, scared. "Mija, it's me. I'm okay. Everything is okay." "Mom." Maria burst into tears. "They wouldn't tell me anything. They said you were at the mansion. They said there was a shooting. I thought you were dead. I thought, I'm alive. I'm safe. The bad man can't hurt us anymore." "What happened, Mom? What happened?" Elena looked at the white sheet the paramedics had pulled over Jonathan's body. At the police officers swarming the garden. At Victoria sitting on the patio steps, her face blank with shock. "I'll explain everything when I see you. I'm coming to the station now. Just wait for me, okay? I love you." "I love you too, Mom." Elena hung up. Cole was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "You did good tonight," he said. "You did what most people couldn't." "I did what I had to do." "That's exactly what I mean." He paused. "The investigation isn't over, you know. Jonathan had help, the woman on the phone, the person he was texting on that burner. We need to find them." Elena thought about the voice she had heard through Jonathan's study door. A woman's voice, cold and calculating, planning the murder of a child like it was a business transaction. "I can help," Elena said. "I'll tell you everything I remember." "I know you will." Cole put his hand on her shoulder. "But first, go see your daughter. The rest can wait until morning." 45 minutes later, Elena walked into the police station. Maria was waiting in the lobby, her face red from crying, her hands twisting together. The moment she saw Elena, she ran. They held each other for a long time. Elena stroked her daughter's hair and whispered words in Spanish, the language of her childhood, the language of comfort. Around them, officers moved and phones rang and the world kept turning, but for that moment, nothing else existed. "I was so scared," Maria whispered. "When they came to the school, when they said you were in trouble, I thought I was going to lose you. I can't lose you, Mom. You're all I have. You'll never lose me, I promise. We're together now. We're safe." Maria pulled back and looked at her mother's face. "Is it really over? Is he really dead?" Elena nodded. "He's really dead." "Good." Maria's voice was hard, older than her 16 years. "I'm glad he's dead. I know I shouldn't say that, but I'm glad." Elena didn't argue. She understood. Some people didn't deserve mercy. Some people didn't deserve forgiveness. Some people only deserved to be stopped. "Come on," Elena said. "Let's go home." But as they walked toward the exit, a young officer stopped them. "Miss Vasquez, Detective Cole needs to see you. It's urgent." Elena's stomach dropped. "Can it wait? I need to get my daughter home." "He said it's about the investigation. He said you'll want to hear this." Elena looked at Maria. "Wait here. I'll be right back." "No, Hakit." Maria grabbed her hand. "I'm coming with you. Whatever it is, I want to know." Elena hesitated, then nodded. Together, they followed the officer down a long hallway to Cole's office. The detective was standing behind his desk, his face grim. Another woman sat in one of the chairs, her back to the door. When she turned around, Elena felt her blood turn to ice. It was a face she had seen before, in the society pages of magazines, at the Whitmore mansion during parties and galas. Jonathan's business partner, his closest advisor, Margaret Chen. "Miss Vasquez," Margaret said calmly, "we need to talk." Elena stepped back, self-instinctively pushing Maria behind her. You're the woman on the phone, the one Jonathan was talking to." Margaret didn't deny it. "I'm the woman who was trying to stop him." "Stop him? You were helping him plan murder." "No." Margaret's voice was firm. "I was gathering evidence. I've been working with the FBI for 8 months building a case against Jonathan and his network. A case that you've just compromised by getting him killed." Elena stared at her. Her mind couldn't process what she was hearing. Cole stepped in. "Miss Chen is a confidential informant. She's been feeding us information about Jonathan's financial crimes, his money laundering, his connections to organized crime. We were weeks away from a major bust." "But the phone calls," Elena said. "I heard her. She was talking about the insurance policy, about the trust restructuring." "I was playing along," Margaret said, "keeping his trust while documenting everything. The recordings I've made over the past 8 months would have put him away for life." She paused. "Would have put a lot of people away." Elena's legs went weak. She grabbed the doorframe to steady herself. "Are you saying I made a mistake by saving Lucas, by exposing Jonathan?" Margaret's expression softened slightly. "You saved a child's life. That's not a mistake. But Jonathan wasn't working alone. He had partners, investors, people who helped him move money and hide evidence, and those people are now running scared, destroying evidence, disappearing." "So what happens now, Timul?" Cole and Margaret exchanged a look. "We pivot," Cole said. "We use what we have. Jonathan's phone, his documents, Victoria's recordings. There's still enough to build a case, but we need to move fast." Margaret stood up. "There's something else you should know, Miss Vasquez. Jonathan had a backup plan. If anything went wrong, if he got caught or killed, he had instructions set up. Automatic." "Instructions for what?" Margaret's eyes were cold. "Insurance policies have beneficiaries. Wills have executors. Vendettas have enforcers. Jonathan may be dead, but the people he worked with are very much alive, and they're going to want to make sure no one talks." The words hung in the air like poison. "You're saying we're still in danger," Elena said quietly. "I'm saying you need to be careful, very careful." Margaret headed for the door. "I'll be in touch, Detective. Don't let anything happen to your witness." She left without looking back. Elena stood in Cole's office, her mind reeling. Maria gripped her hand so tight it hurt. "Mom?" "What did she mean? Who else is out there?" Cole answered before Elena could. "Jonathan had connections to some very bad people. Drug money, fraud, tax evasion. He was laundering cash for a network that spans 3 states. He paused. "Those people don't like loose ends." "So we're loose ends," Elena said. Right now, you are the most important witness in a major federal investigation, which means we're going to protect you. For how long? Cole didn't answer. He didn't have to. The first attempt came 3 days later. Elena and Maria had been moved to a safe house in Pasadena, a small apartment with bars on the windows and 2 federal marshals stationed outside. Elena had thought they were overreacting, had thought the danger was exaggerated. She was wrong. It was 3 a.m. when she heard the sound. A soft click from the front door, like someone testing the lock. Elena sat up in bed, her heart pounding. She listened. Another click. Then silence. She moved quietly to Maria's room. Her daughter was asleep, her face peaceful, unaware of the danger. Elena didn't wake her. Instead, she crept to the living room and peered through the blinds. The 2 marshals were still at their posts. One was reading a magazine, the other was drinking coffee. Everything looked normal, but Elena had learned to trust her instincts, and her instincts were screaming. She grabbed her phone and called Cole. "Someone's testing our door," she whispered. "The marshals don't seem to notice anything." Cole's voice was instantly alert. "Stay away from the windows. Don't make any noise. I'm sending backup now." Elena hung up. She moved back toward Maria's room, her eyes scanning every shadow. A soft thump came from the kitchen. Someone was inside. Elena's hand closed around the first thing she could find. A heavy glass vase from the hallway table. Her heart was pounding so loud she was sure the intruder could hear it. A figure emerged from the kitchen doorway, dressed in black, face covered, moving toward Maria's room. Elena didn't think. She swung the vase with everything she had. It shattered against the intruder's skull. He went down hard, crashing into the wall. Before he could recover, Elena was on top of him, hitting him again and again with the broken base of the vase. "Mom!" Maria's scream cut through the chaos. The front door burst open. Marshals poured in, weapons drawn. On the ground now. Elena stumbled backward, covered in blood that wasn't hers. The intruder was motionless on the floor. She had hit him so many times she had lost count. One of the marshals checked his pulse. "He's alive. Barely." He looked at Elena with something like awe. "You took down a professional hitman with a flower vase." Elena's legs gave out. She sat on the floor, shaking, staring at her bloody hands. Maria ran to her, dropping beside her, crying. "Mom, are you okay? Are you hurt?" Elena couldn't answer. She just held her daughter and tried to remember how to breathe. The intruder's name was David Kowalski, ex-military, private contractor, currently on the payroll of a shell company that traced back to Jonathan's network. Cole laid out the evidence the next morning in a conference room at FBI headquarters. Kowalski was hired 3 days ago. The order came from someone inside the network, but we haven't identified who yet. He was supposed to eliminate you and Victoria both. Make it look like murder-suicide. Elena sat across from him, her hands still bandaged from the broken glass. Maria was beside her, refusing to let go of her mother's arm. "How did he get past the marshals?" "He didn't. He came through the building's ventilation system. Professional job. These people know what they're doing." Cole paused. "Which is why we're moving you again. Further this time. Out of state." Elena shook her head. "I'm not running. I'm not spending the rest of my life hiding from these people." "Then what do you suggest?" Elena looked at him. "You said the network is scared, that they're destroying evidence, disappearing. That means they're vulnerable. They're making mistakes." "What's your point?" "My point is I've spent 20 years being invisible, watching, listening, seeing things other people miss." She leaned forward. "Put me back in. Let me help you find them." Cole stared at her. "You're not a trained agent. You're a cleaning lady." "I'm a cleaning lady who took down a professional hitman with a flower vase. I'm a cleaning lady who found a baby buried alive when the entire LAPD couldn't. I'm a cleaning lady who got Jonathan Whitmore to confess while wearing a wire." Elena's voice was steel. "I'm exactly what you need." Maria spoke up for the first time. "Mom, you can't. It's too dangerous." Elena turned to her daughter. "Mija, those people tried to kill us tonight. They'll try again. The only way this ends is if we stop them." "Then let the police do it. Let the FBI..." "The police didn't find Lucas buried in that garden. The FBI didn't know Jonathan's partner was his wife. I did. I found the truth because I see things they can't." Elena took her daughter's hands. "I have to do this. For us. For our future. So we never have to be afraid again." Maria's eyes filled with tears. But behind the fear, Elena saw something else. Understanding. Pride. "Promise me you'll come back," Maria whispered. "I promise." Cole had been silent through the exchange. Now he spoke. "This is against every protocol, every rule. If something happens to you, my career is over. And if you don't let me help those people disappear, Jonathan's partners walk free, and someday they try again." Elena met his eyes. "What's your career worth compared to that?" Cole was quiet for a long moment, then he smiled. "You know, you're the most stubborn woman I've ever met. That's why I'm still alive." The operation took 2 weeks to plan. Elena's job was simple. Get close to Jonathan's associates, listen, watch, report back anything useful. She wasn't carrying a weapon, wasn't wearing a wire. She was just doing what she had always done, being invisible. The target was a woman named Sandra Wells, Jonathan's accountant, the person who knew where all the money went. According to Margaret Chen, Sandra was the key to the entire network. Sandra was also looking for a new housekeeper. Elena applied for the job the old-fashioned way, through an agency, a fake resume, references that the FBI had manufactured. 3 days later, she was cleaning Sandra Wells's penthouse in downtown Los Angeles. The apartment was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows, art on every wall, furniture that cost more than Elena's yearly salary. But Elena wasn't there to admire the decor. She was there to find evidence. For the first week, she did nothing but clean, learned Sandra's schedule, memorized her habits, figured out when she was home, when she was out, when she was on the phone with people she didn't want overheard. Sandra barely noticed her. Just like Victoria hadn't. Just like Jonathan hadn't. Elena was the help, the furniture, the air. She was invisible. And invisible people saw everything. On day 8, Elena found her first piece of evidence. A notebook hidden in Sandra's bedroom closet, filled with numbers and codes and names. She photographed every page. On day 12, she overheard a phone call. Sandra talking to someone about moving the assets before the feds catch up. Elena reported it to Cole. On day 15, Sandra had a visitor, a man Elena recognized from the news, a state senator. He and Sandra disappeared into the bedroom for 2 hours. Elena photographed the car he arrived in, the plates, the timestamps. On day 18, everything changed. Elena was cleaning the kitchen when Sandra walked in. The woman looked different, tense, frightened. "Elena, I need you to do something for me." Elena stopped polishing the counter. "Of course, Ms. Wells." Sandra handed her a thick envelope. "Take this to the address written on the front. Don't open it. Don't tell anyone. Just deliver it and come back." Elena looked at the envelope. It was heavy, stuffed with papers. "What is this insurance?" Sandra's voice was tight. "In case something happens to me." Elena's blood ran cold. "Is something going to happen to you?" Sandra didn't answer. She just pressed the envelope into Elena's hands. "Do this for me and I'll pay you more money than you've ever seen. Enough to disappear. To start over. To give your daughter the life she deserves." Elena stared at her. Sandra knew. Somehow, she knew who Elena really was. "How long have you known?" "Since the day you walked in the door." Sandra smiled bitterly. "Did you think Jonathan's people didn't do background checks? I knew you were FBI the moment you applied." Elena's heart was pounding. "Then why did you hire me?" "Because I needed a way out, and you're my ticket." Sandra's eyes were desperate. "I have evidence that can bring down everyone. The senators, the bankers, the cops on the payroll, everything. It's all in that envelope." "Then why not just give it to the FBI yourself?" "Because the moment I do, I'm dead. They have people everywhere. In the department, in the bureau. I don't know who to trust." Sandra grabbed Elena's arm. "But I trust you. I saw what you did for that baby. For Victoria. You're not like the others. You actually care about doing the right thing." Elena looked at the envelope, at Sandra's frightened face, at the desperation in her eyes. "Why should I believe you? You helped Jonathan try to kill his own son." "I didn't know about the baby." Sandra's voice cracked. "I swear to God I didn't know. I handled his money, yes. I knew he was dirty, but I didn't know he was capable of that." Tears streamed down her face. "When I found out what he did to Lucas, I knew I had to stop, had to get out, had to burn it all down." Elena wanted to believe her, wanted to think there was still redemption possible for people like Sandra, but she had learned a hard lesson in the past 3 weeks. Trust was earned, not given. "I'll take the envelope," Elena said slowly, "but not to your address, to Detective Cole. If what you're saying is true, he'll protect you." Sandra shook her head. "Cole can't be trusted. There are people in his department. Cole saved my life. He's the only person I trust completely." Sandra stared at her for a long moment, then her shoulders slumped. Fine, take it to Cole, but do it now, tonight, before they realize what I've done." Elena nodded. She slipped the envelope into her bag and headed for the door. "Elena?" She turned back. Sandra's face was gray, haunted. "If this doesn't work, if something happens to me, tell my daughter I'm sorry. Tell her I tried to make it right at the end." Elena didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. She never saw Sandra Wells alive again. The car bomb went off at 11:47 p.m. Elena was 6 blocks away when she heard the explosion. She turned and saw the fireball rising into the night sky, orange and black and terrible. Her phone rang. "Cole." "Where are you?" "6 blocks from Sandra's building. I just heard, 'Get out of there, now. Don't go back to your apartment. Don't contact anyone. Just run.'" Elena ran. She ditched her phone in a garbage can, took 3 different buses, ended up at a motel in Commerce, paying cash for a room under a fake name. She sat on the bed, shaking, clutching the envelope that Sandra had died for. After an hour, she opened it. Inside were bank statements, wire transfers, names and dates and amounts, evidence of money flowing through shell companies frickled from drug cartels to real estate developments to political campaigns. And there on the last page, a list of names, people on Jonathan's payroll, police officers, judges, federal agents. Elena's eyes landed on one name and her blood turned to ice. Detective Marcus Cole. No, it wasn't possible. Cole had saved her life, had protected her, had put himself on the line again and again, but his name was there, on Sandra's list, with dates and payment amounts going back 3 years. Elena's mind raced. If Cole was dirty, then everything she had believed was a lie. Every protection, every promise, every reassurance. She had been a pawn, from the very beginning. Her hands trembled as she pulled out the burner phone Cole had given her for emergencies. She stared at it. If she called him now, if she told him what she had found, what would happen? Would he help her, or would he silence her? Elena thought about Maria, about the safe house where her daughter was waiting, protected by marshals that Cole had assigned. If Cole was dirty, then Maria wasn't safe. No one was safe. She had to get to her daughter, had to warn her, had to run. But first she needed help, real help, from someone she could trust. Elena thought about everyone she knew, everyone she had met in the past 3 weeks, and one name kept coming back. Margaret Chen, the FBI informant, the woman who had worked undercover for 8 months, the woman who had tried to bring down Jonathan's network from the inside. Elena didn't trust Margaret, but she trusted her even less than she trusted Cole right now, and sometimes the enemy of your enemy was your only option. She found a payphone 3 blocks from the motel, dialed the number Margaret had left with Cole's assistant. It rang 6 times before someone answered. "Who is this for me? Elena Vasquez. I have Sandra Wells's evidence, and I have proof that Detective Cole is dirty." A long pause. Then Margaret's voice sharp and urgent. "Where are you? I'm not telling you until I know my daughter is safe." "Your daughter is at the safe house in—" "Not anymore. I'm pulling her out, tonight." "Elena, listen to me. If Cole is compromised, then the people guarding Maria might be too. You can't just show up there. You'll put both of you in danger." Elena's heart was pounding. "Then what do I do?" "Stay where you are. I'm going to send someone to get Maria, someone I trust completely, someone outside the normal chain of command." "Who?" "Her name is Special Agent Diaz. She's FBI, but she reports directly to Washington. Cole doesn't even know she exists." Elena wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that someone could save her daughter. "How do I know you're not lying? How do I know you're not part of it too?" Margaret's voice softened. "You don't. You're just going to have to take a leap of faith. The same leap you took when you dug that baby out of the ground." Elena closed her eyes. Thought about Lucas. About the moment she heard his cry from beneath the earth. About the choice she made to dig instead of walk away. She had trusted her instincts then. She would trust them now. The motel is called the Sunrise Inn, Commerce Boulevard, room 12. "Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. I'll have Diaz there within the hour." The line went dead. Elena walked back to the motel, locked the door, pushed the dresser in front of it, sat on the bed with Sandra's envelope clutched to her chest, and waited. 47 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. "Elena Vasquez, I'm Special Agent Diaz. Margaret Chen sent me." Elena didn't move. "Show me your badge, under the door." A moment later, a badge slid through the gap. Elena picked it up, examined it. It looked real. "How do I know this isn't fake?" "You don't, but if I wanted to kill you, I wouldn't be knocking." Elena thought about that. It was a fair point. She moved the dresser and opened the door. Agent Diaz was younger than Elena expected. Late 20s, dark hair, sharp eyes. She was alone. We need to move. Now. I have Maria in a car 2 blocks away. Elena's heart leaped. She's here. She's safe. She's safe, but she won't be for long if we don't get out of this city. Elena grabbed the envelope and followed Diaz out of the motel. They walked quickly through dark streets, past closed businesses and sleeping houses. The car was exactly where Diaz said it would be, a black SUV with tinted windows. And there in the back seat was Maria. Elena yanked the door open and pulled her daughter into her arms. Mom, oh God, Mom, I was so scared. They came and got me in the middle of the night, said you were in trouble, said we had to go. I'm okay, mija, I'm okay. We're leaving. We're getting out of here. Diaz climbed into the driver's seat. Buckle up, we've got a long drive ahead. The SUV pulled away from the curb and merged onto the empty highway. The city lights faded behind them. The darkness swallowed everything. Elena sat in the back seat holding Maria, watching the road ahead. She had the evidence. She had her daughter. She had a chance. But somewhere out there, Cole was still free. Jonathan's network was still operating, and the people who wanted her dead were still hunting. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The SUV cut through the darkness at 90 miles per hour. Elena kept her arm wrapped around Maria, feeling her daughter's heartbeat against her side. Fast, scared, but alive. Agent Diaz checked the rearview mirror for the 20th time in 10 minutes. We're being followed. Elena's blood went cold. She turned and looked through the back window. Headlights, 2 sets, maybe half a mile behind them. Are you sure? They've matched every turn we've made since we left Commerce, 3 different routes. No one does that by accident. Maria gripped Elena's hand. Mom, what do we do? Elena looked at Diaz. Can you lose them? I can try. Diaz pressed the accelerator. The SUV surged forward, the engine roaring. But if they're who I think they are, they know these roads better than I do. Who do you think they are? Diaz didn't answer. She jerked the wheel hard to the right, sending the SUV screaming down an off-ramp. Elena and Maria slammed against the door. Behind them, the headlights followed. Hold on, Diaz said. She killed the headlights and took a sharp left onto a dirt road. The SUV bounced and shuddered over rough terrain. Elena couldn't see anything through the windshield except darkness. Where are we going? Somewhere they won't expect. The dirt road twisted through what felt like wilderness. After 3 minutes, Diaz pulled the SUV behind a cluster of trees and cut the engine. Everyone down, don't make a sound. Elena pulled Maria onto the floor of the back seat. They lay there, barely breathing, listening. Car engines. Getting closer, getting louder, then stopping, doors opening, footsteps on gravel. They went this way. A man's voice, rough, impatient. Find them. More footsteps, spreading out, searching. Elena pressed her hand over Maria's mouth. Her daughter's eyes were wide with terror. A flashlight beam swept across the SUV's windows. Elena's heart stopped. The beam moved on. Footsteps crunched past inches from where they were hiding. Elena could hear the man breathing, could smell cigarette smoke. Then the footsteps faded. They're not here, the rough voice again. Must have taken the other fork. Boss isn't going to like this. Boss can deal with it. Let's go. Car doors slammed. Engine started. The sound faded into the distance. Elena didn't move, didn't breathe, not for another 5 minutes. Finally, Diaz raised her head. They're gone. For now. Elena helped Maria back onto the seat. Her daughter was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. Mom, I can't do this. I can't. I'm so scared. I know, mija. I know. Elena pulled her close. But we're alive. We're together. That's what matters. Diaz started the engine and pulled back onto the dirt road. We can't go to the original safe house. If Cole is compromised, he knows all our locations. Then where do we go? I have a place, off the books. Not even Margaret knows about it. Diaz glanced at Elena in the rearview mirror. It's not fancy, but it's secure. How far? 4 hours, maybe 5. Elena looked at Maria, who had finally stopped shaking. Her daughter's eyes were closed, her breathing slowly evening out. Drive, Elena said. We'll be ready. They reached the safe house at 4:17 a.m. It was a cabin in the mountains somewhere north of San Bernardino. No neighbors, no cell service, nothing but trees and silence. Diaz led them inside and locked the door behind them. There's food in the pantry, water, a generator for power. We can stay here for a few days while I figure out our next move. Maria collapsed onto a worn couch and was asleep within seconds. Elena covered her with a blanket, then turned to Diaz. I need to ask you something. Diaz nodded. Go ahead. How do I know you're not one of them? How do I know this isn't another trap? Diaz sat down at a small wooden table. Her face was tired, older than it had looked a few hours ago. You don't, You can't. That's the truth. She paused. But I can tell you why I'm doing this. My brother was a cop in San Diego. Good cop, honest. He found out about a money laundering operation run by people connected to Jonathan Whitmore's network. He tried to report it. Elena waited. They killed him. Made it look like a suicide. I was 23 years old. I'm sorry. I've spent 7 years trying to bring these people down. 7 years of undercover work, dead ends, watching guilty people walk free. Diaz met Elena's eyes. You have Sandra's evidence. That envelope is the key to everything I've been working toward. If you give it to the wrong person, it disappears. If you give it to me, I can make sure it reaches people who will actually use it. Elena thought about the envelope still clutched in her bag. Thought about all the names inside, all the crimes, all the victims. Why should I trust you more than Cole? Because Cole's name is on that list. Mine isn't. Diaz leaned forward. Look, Elena, I know you've been through hell. I know everyone you've trusted has let you down, but we're on the same side here. We both want justice. We both want these people to pay. Elena studied her face, looking for lies, looking for hidden agendas, but all she saw was exhaustion and grief, and something that looked like hope. Okay, Elena said. I'll trust you for now. That's all I'm asking. Elena handed her the envelope. Diaz opened it carefully, spreading the documents across the table. Her eyes moved quickly, scanning names and numbers. Jesus, she whispered. Sandra wasn't kidding. This is everything. Bank accounts in the Caymans, shell companies in Delaware, payments to judges, police chiefs, even a congressman. She looked up at Elena. Do you understand what this means? It means we can bring them down. It means we can bring down the whole damn system. Diaz's voice was fierce. But we have to be smart about it. We can't go through normal channels. Too many people are compromised. Then what do? We go straight to the top, the Attorney General's office. There's a prosecutor there, Sarah Chen, no relation to Margaret. She's been building a case against political corruption for years. If anyone can use this evidence, it's her. How do we reach her? I have a contact, someone who can get us a meeting, but it's risky. We'll have to go to Washington. Washington, 3,000 miles away. Through airports and highways and cities full of people who wanted them dead. Elena looked at Maria still sleeping on the couch. Her daughter looked so young, so vulnerable. When do we leave? Tomorrow night. I need to make some calls first. Set things up. Diaz stood. Get some rest. You're going to need it. Elena didn't sleep. She sat in a chair by the window, watching the sun rise over the mountains, thinking about everything that had happened. About Lucas in that box. About Jonathan's cold eyes. About Sandra dying in a ball of fire. About Cole. She had trusted him. Completely. He had saved her life. He had protected her daughter. And the whole time he had been working for the people who wanted her dead. How had she not seen it? Maria stirred on the couch. Her eyes opened slowly, confused. Mom, where are we? Somewhere safe, for now. Maria sat up, looking around. What time is it? Almost 7. You should eat something. Elena found bread and peanut butter in the pantry. She made sandwiches and brought them to Maria. Mom, I need to tell you something. Elena sat beside her. What is it? Maria's eyes were wet. When they came to get me last night before Agent Diaz, there was someone, a man. He said he was a marshal, but something about him was wrong. The way he looked at me. The questions he asked. Elena's stomach dropped. What did he ask? Where you were hiding, what evidence you had, whether you talked to anyone else? Maria's voice trembled. I didn't tell him anything. I said I didn't know, but Mom, I think he was going to hurt me. I think if Agent Diaz hadn't shown up when she did... Elena pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. He's never going to touch you. No one is ever going to hurt you. I promise. How can you promise that these people are everywhere? They're in the police, the FBI, everywhere. How do we fight something like that? Elena pulled back and looked at her daughter's face, so scared, so lost. Do you remember what I told you about crossing the border, about your Aunt Rosa? Maria nodded. When we were in that desert, when Rosa was dying, I wanted to give up. I wanted to lie down in the sand and let it end, but I didn't. Because I knew that if I gave up, the people who tried to stop us would win. The coyotes who abandoned us. The sun that killed my sister. The world that didn't care if we lived or died. Elena's voice hardened. I decided that day that I would never give up. No matter how bad it got, no matter how scared I was, I would keep fighting until I couldn't fight anymore. Maria stared at her. And you've been fighting ever since. Yes. And now I need you to fight with me. Not with fists, with courage, with hope, with the belief that what we're doing matters. Elena squeezed her hands. Can you do that, mija? Can you be brave for just a little longer? Maria was silent for a moment, then she nodded. I can be brave, like you. Elena kissed her forehead. You're braver than you know. They spent the day preparing. Diaz made phone calls on a satellite phone she had hidden in the cabin. Elena sorted through Sandra's documents, organizing them by category, making notes about what each page contained. Maria helped. She was good with numbers with patterns. She found connections that Elena had missed. Mom, look at this. Maria pointed to 2 different bank statements. These transfers happened on the same day 3 years apart, exact same amount, $847,000, and they both went to the same account in the Caymans. Elena looked at the account number, looked at the name attached to it. Her blood turned to ice. Detective Cole's wife. What? The account. It's in the name of Patricia Cole. That's Detective Cole's wife. Maria stared at her. So he wasn't just taking bribes. He was hiding the money through his wife. Elena felt sick. Cole had stood in her apartment, had looked her in the eye, had promised to protect her and her daughter, and the whole time his wife had been laundering money for the people trying to kill them. She showed the documents to Diaz. This confirms everything, Diaz said. Cole isn't just dirty. He's one of their key operators. He's probably the one who arranged Sandra's murder. And the men who came for Maria last night. Cole's people, has to be. Diaz's face was grim. Which means he knows we're onto him. He's going to be desperate. What does that mean for us? It means we need to move faster than planned. Washington can't wait until tomorrow night. Diaz checked her phone. I'm going to call Sarah Chen directly, see if she can meet us tonight. Tonight, but we're hundreds of miles away. There's a private airstrip about 2 hours from here. I know a pilot who owes me a favor. If I can get us on a plane by midnight, we can be in D.C. by morning. Elena looked at Maria. Her daughter nodded. Do it, Elena said. Call her. The next 6 hours were a blur of preparation. Diaz made arrangements. Elena organized the evidence into a briefcase. Maria packed what little they had. At 9 p.m. they piled into the SUV and headed for the airstrip. The drive was tense. Every set of headlights made Elena's heart race. Every shadow seemed like a threat. But they made it to the airstrip without incident. The pilot was waiting. A weathered man in his 60s named Jack. Diaz, been a while. Thanks for doing this, Jack. You saved my daughter's life. I owe you everything. He looked at Elena and Maria. These the passengers. Yeah, we need to be in Virginia by dawn. It'll be tight, but I can do it. Jack jerked his thumb toward a small plane. Get in, we leave in 5. Elena helped Maria into the plane. The seats were cramped. The cabin smelled like fuel. But Elena didn't care. Every mile they flew was a mile farther from the people hunting them. The plane lifted off at 10:47 p.m. Elena watched the lights of California disappear below them. Somewhere down there, Cole was searching for them. The network was scrambling to find them. Sandra's killers were wondering where the evidence had gone. But they were above it all now, flying east, toward justice. Maria fell asleep against Elena's shoulder. Diaz was in the co-pilot seat talking quietly with Jack. Elena sat alone with her thoughts. She thought about Victoria, about Lucas. She wondered if they were safe. Wondered if Victoria knew about Cole's betrayal. She thought about her mother back in Mexico. About the phone calls she had promised to make and never did. About the years that had slipped by while she cleaned other people's houses and tried to be invisible. She thought about Rosa. About the last words her sister had spoken before she died. Don't stop, Elena. Don't ever stop. And she hadn't. For 20 years, she hadn't stopped. And now finally, she was going to finish what she started. The plane landed at a private airstrip in rural Virginia at 5:23 a.m. A car was waiting, a black sedan with tinted windows. The driver was a young woman in a dark suit. Agent Diaz. That's me? I'm Agent Park. Sarah Chen sent me. She's waiting at the secure location. They drove for another hour through countryside that gradually gave way to suburbs. Finally, they pulled into an underground parking garage beneath an unremarkable office building. Agent Park led them through a maze of corridors and security checkpoints. Elena lost count of how many doors they passed through, how many guards checked their IDs. Finally, they reached a conference room, and there, sitting at the head of a long table, was Sarah Chen. She was smaller than Elena expected. 50s. Gray streaked through black hair, sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Miss Vasquez, I've heard a lot about you. Good things, I hope. Extraordinary things. Chen gestured to the chairs. Please sit. We have a lot to discuss. Elena sat. Maria sat beside her. Diaz stood by the door. Agent Diaz tells me you have evidence that could bring down one of the largest criminal networks in California, Chen said. Evidence that implicates police officers, federal agents, judges, and at least one sitting congressman. That's right. May I see it? Elena placed the briefcase on the table and opened it. The documents spread out before them. Bank statements, wire transfers, names, dates, amounts. Chen studied them in silence for almost 10 minutes. Her expression didn't change, but Elena saw her hands tighten on the edge of the table. This is remarkable, Chen said finally. This is exactly what we've been looking for. Can you use it? I can do more than use it. I can destroy them. Chen looked up. But I need to ask you something first. Something important. Go ahead. Are you willing to testify in court on the record because this evidence is powerful, but it's not enough on its own? We need witnesses, people who can connect the dots, people who saw what happened and can tell the world. Elena thought about everything she had been through, the death threats, the assassination attempts, the terror of watching her daughter almost get kidnapped. She thought about what it would mean to testify, to stand up in a courtroom and point at the people who had tried to destroy her, to tell the whole world what she knew. It would be dangerous. It might get her killed. But she thought about Lucas, about digging him out of that grave, about the moment she heard his weak cry and knew he was alive. She thought about Rosa, about the promise she had made in that burning desert. Yes, Elena said. I'll testify. Chen smiled. It was the first time her expression had softened. Then let's get to work. The next 3 days were intense. Elena was interviewed by prosecutors for hours at a time. She told them everything, about Jonathan, about the conversation she overheard, about Cole, about Sandra, every detail, every memory, every piece of the puzzle. Maria was interviewed too, about the men who came for her, about what she had seen and heard. Diaz provided her own testimony, about her undercover work, about the network structure, about the people at the top. And slowly, a case began to take shape. On the 4th day, Chen called Elena into her office. We're ready to move. Tomorrow morning we're going to arrest Detective Cole, along with 14 other individuals connected to the network. It's going to be the biggest takedown in California history. Elena felt something shift in her chest. Relief, gratitude, disbelief. It's really happening. It's really happening. And it's happening because of you. Chen paused. There's something else. Victoria Whitmore called this morning. She wants to see you. Victoria? Is she okay? She's safe. We've had her in protective custody since the night Jonathan died, but she's been asking for you, says she needs to thank you in person. Where is she? Downstairs, in one of the secure rooms. I can take you to her if you'd like. Elena nodded. Please. They walked through more corridors, more security checkpoints. Finally, Chen opened a door. Victoria was sitting on a small couch, Lucas in her arms. The baby was bigger now, healthier. His cheeks were pink and his eyes were bright. When Victoria saw Elena, tears immediately streamed down her face. Elena, oh God, Elena. Elena crossed the room and sat beside her. Victoria grabbed her hand. I don't know how to thank you, for everything, for saving Lucas, for saving me, for not giving up when everyone else would have. You helped too. You wore that wire, you risked everything. Only because you showed me how. Victoria looked at her son. He's going to grow up knowing your name, knowing what you did for him. When he's old enough to understand, I'm going to tell him about the cleaning lady who saved his life. Elena felt tears burning in her own eyes. He's beautiful. He's alive, because of you. Victoria paused. I heard about Cole, about everything. It's unbelievable. It's over now, or it will be tomorrow. But what happens to you after the trial? After all of this is done? Elena thought about that question. She had been so focused on surviving, on fighting, on reaching this moment, that she hadn't thought about what came next. I don't know, she admitted. I've never really thought about the future. There was never time. Victoria reached into her pocket and pulled out an envelope. I want you to have this. Elena opened it. Inside was a check. The amount made her gasp. Victoria, I can't. Yes, you can. You saved my son's life, twice. You almost died protecting us. This is not charity. This is not a thank you. This is justice. Victoria's voice was firm. Take the money. Use it for Maria's education. Use it to buy a house. Use it to build the life you deserve. Elena stared at the check. More money than she had ever seen. More money than she would have earned in 20 years of cleaning houses. I don't know what to say. Say you'll take it. Say you'll use it. Say you'll finally stop being invisible. Elena looked at Victoria, at Lucas, at the life she had saved and the future she had made possible. Okay, she whispered. I'll take it. The arrest happened at 6 a.m. the next morning. Elena watched on a secure video feed as tactical teams moved on 14 locations simultaneously. She watched Cole get pulled from his house in handcuffs, his wife screaming on the lawn. She watched senators and bankers and police chiefs get marched to waiting cars. She watched 20 years of corruption come crashing down. Chen stood beside her watching the same feed. This is just the beginning, Chen said. The trials will take months, maybe years, but they're done, all of them. And the network? Dismantled. The money has been frozen. The shell companies have been seized. Anyone who isn't in custody is running for the border. Chen smiled. You did this, Elena. You in a vase full of flowers and a pair of bleeding hands. Elena didn't feel triumphant. She felt tired, exhausted to her bones. But she also felt something she hadn't felt in 20 years. Peace. That afternoon, Elena and Maria left the secure facility for the first time in 4 days. Agent Park drove them to a hotel where they would stay until the initial hearings were complete. The hotel room was simple but comfortable. 2 beds, a window overlooking the city. Room service. Maria stood at the window looking out at Washington, D.C. Mom, what happens now? Elena sat on the bed feeling the weight of everything finally starting to lift. Now we rest. For the first time in weeks, we don't have to run. Don't have to hide. Don't have to look over our shoulders. And after that, Elena thought about the check in her pocket, about the future it represented. After that, you go to college. You become a doctor. You build the life you've always dreamed of. What about you? Elena smiled. I think I might go back to school too. Get my nursing degree. Help people the way I couldn't help Rosa. Maria turned from the window. Her eyes were wet. I'm so proud of you, Mom. I know I don't say it enough, but I am. You're the bravest person I've ever known. Elena opened her arms. Maria crossed the room and fell into them. They held each other for a long time. 2 women who had survived the impossible. 2 women who had refused to give up. I love you, mija. I love you too, Mom. The phone rang. Elena answered. Miss Vasquez, this is the front desk. You have a visitor. Elena's heart skipped. Who is it? She says her name is Margaret Chen. She says it's important. Elena looked at Maria, then she spoke into the phone. Send her up. 5 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Elena opened it. Margaret Chen stood in the hallway, the FBI informant, the woman who had started all of this by trying to bring down Jonathan from the inside. May I come in? Elena stepped aside. Margaret walked in and sat on one of the beds. She looked different than she had before. Younger, lighter, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. I wanted to thank you personally, Margaret said. What you did in the past week, no one else could have done. We had been trying to bring down this network for years, decades, and you did it in a month. I didn't do it alone? No, but you were the catalyst. The spark that set everything in motion. Margaret paused. I also wanted to tell you something. Something I learned during the arrests. What? Sandra Wells. Before she died, she told you about her daughter, asked you to pass on a message. Elena nodded. She said to tell her daughter she was sorry, that she tried to make it right. I found her daughter. She's 19 now, in college. Margaret's voice softened. I told her what Sandra did, how she gathered the evidence, how she gave it to you even though she knew it would get her killed, how she chose to do the right thing at the end. How did she take it? She cried. But she also said something. She said her mother had always taught her that it's never too late to change, that no matter how many mistakes you make, you can always choose to do better. Margaret looked at Elena. I thought you should know that your message got through, that Sandra's sacrifice meant something. Elena felt tears on her cheeks. She hadn't even realized she was crying. Thank you for telling me. Margaret stood. There's one more thing. The FBI is putting together a special unit to track down networks like Jonathan's, to find the corruption and root it out before it takes hold. That sounds important. It is, and they want to offer you a position. Elena stared at her. Me, but I'm not a trained agent. I'm just a... A cleaning lady, yes, I know. That's exactly what they want. Margaret smiled. Elena, you have a gift. You see things other people miss. You understand how power works, how the powerful hide their crimes. And you have something no amount of training can provide. You have courage. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now. Think about it. The offer will be there when you're ready. Margaret headed for the door. Whatever you decide, know that you've already done more than most people do in a lifetime. You've made a difference, a real difference. She left. Elena stood in the middle of the room, her mind spinning. Maria was watching her. Mom, are you okay? Elena looked at her daughter, at the future stretching out before both of them, at all the possibilities she had never allowed herself to imagine. Yeah, she said slowly. I think I'm going to be okay. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened, everything that had changed. She thought about the job offer, about what it would mean to work for the FBI, to hunt down the corrupt and the powerful, to protect people like Victoria and Lucas, people like Maria. She thought about nursing school, about helping people in a different way, about healing instead of fighting. She thought about Rosa, about what her sister would think of everything that had happened. Would she be proud? Would she be scared? Elena closed her eyes and let herself remember. The desert, the heat, Rosa's face as she took her last breath. Don't stop, Rosa had whispered. Don't ever stop. Elena opened her eyes. She knew what she was going to do. In the morning, she called Margaret Chen. I've made my decision. And, Elena took a deep breath, I'm in. 6 months had passed since Elena made the call that changed her life. 6 months of training. 6 months of learning. 6 months of transforming from a cleaning lady into something else entirely. Elena stood in front of a mirror at the FBI training facility in Quantico, adjusting her new suit jacket. The woman staring back at her was almost unrecognizable. Same face, same eyes, but different, harder, stronger, no longer invisible. Agent Vasquez? The words still felt strange on her tongue, but they were hers now, earned with blood and tears and 20 years of surviving. A knock at the door. Mom, they're ready for you? Maria stood in the doorway, beaming. She had flown in from California for the graduation ceremony. Her first semester at UCLA had just ended pre-med full scholarship. The future Elena had always dreamed of for her daughter was finally becoming real. How do I look? Like someone I'm incredibly proud of. Elena felt tears threatening. She blinked them back. Don't make me cry, I just did my makeup. Too late. Maria crossed the room and hugged her. I love you, Mom. I'm so proud of you. I love you too, Mija, more than you'll ever know. They walked together toward the auditorium where the graduation ceremony would take place. Elena's mind wandered back over everything that had brought her here. The trials had started 3 months after the arrest. Cole went first. He had tried to cut a deal offering to testify against the others in exchange for leniency, but Sarah Chen had refused. She had enough evidence to convict everyone. She didn't need his cooperation. Cole's trial lasted 2 weeks. Elena testified for 3 days straight. She told the jury everything about how Cole had pretended to help her, how he had used her to flush out Sandra Wells, how he had sent men to kidnap Maria, how his wife had laundered money for the network for years. Cole watched her from the defense table the whole time. His eyes were cold, dead, the eyes of a man who had finally been exposed for what he really was. The jury convicted him in 4 hours, 25 years to life, no possibility of parole. Elena had watched them lead him away in handcuffs. He had looked at her one last time. She hadn't flinched, hadn't looked away. She had stared right back until he disappeared through the courtroom doors. This isn't over, he had said. You think you've won, but you haven't. There are people you'll never find. People who will never forget what you did. Elena had smiled. Then I'll spend the rest of my life looking for them. The other trials followed in quick succession. The congressmen, the judges, the police chiefs. One by one they fell. Sarah Chen was ruthless, unstoppable. She used Sandra's evidence like a surgical instrument, cutting away the corruption layer by layer. By the time it was over, 47 people had been convicted. Hundreds of millions in stolen money had been recovered. The network that Jonathan Whitmore had built was completely destroyed. And Elena Vasquez, the cleaning lady no one had ever noticed, was famous. She hadn't wanted the attention, had tried to stay out of the spotlight. But the media couldn't resist the story. The immigrant woman who had crossed the desert, who had cleaned floors for 20 years, who had dug a baby out of his grave with her bare hands and brought down one of the largest criminal networks in California history. They called her a hero. She still didn't feel like one. The graduation ceremony was small. 12 agents completing the accelerated program. Elena was the oldest by 15 years. She was also the only one who had been personally recruited by the deputy director. Margaret Chen sat in the front row watching as each agent received their badge and credentials. When Elena's name was called, Margaret stood and applauded. Elena walked across the stage, shook hands with the director, and accepted her badge. Special Agent Elena Vasquez, FBI Anti-Corruption Task Force. The applause was thunderous. Maria was crying. Margaret was smiling. And somewhere Elena liked to think Rosa was watching. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Elena stood awkwardly near the refreshment table, unused to being the center of attention. Margaret approached her with 2 glasses of champagne. "Congratulations, Agent Vasquez." Elena took the glass, but didn't drink. "It still doesn't feel real." "It will. Give it time." Margaret paused. "I have something for you. A graduation present of sorts." She handed Elena a manila folder. Elena opened it. Inside was a photograph. An older woman with gray hair and kind eyes standing in front of a small house. Elena's heart stopped. "Is that your mother, Lucia? She's alive, living in a small town about 3 hours south of Mexico City." Margaret's voice softened. "I know you haven't seen her in 20 years. I know the crossing made it impossible to go back. But things are different now. You're a federal agent. You have resources, access." Elena stared at the photograph. Her mother looked older, frailer, but alive. Alive after all these years. "How did you find her?" "I have my methods." Margaret smiled. "There's a flight leaving for Mexico City tomorrow morning. If you want it, I can have you on that plane." Elena couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. 20 years of separation. 20 years of phone calls that never happened. 20 years of guilt and grief and longing. "Maria comes too," she finally managed. "Of course. And after I get back, I want my first assignment." Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Already? I didn't go through all of this to sit behind a desk. There are people out there like Jonathan, like Cole, people who think they're above the law. I want to find them." Margaret studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. "There's a case I've been tracking, a network operating out of Phoenix, money laundering, human trafficking, political corruption. Sound familiar?" "Very." "When you get back from Mexico, it's yours." Elena looked at the photograph of her mother one more time. Then she looked up at Margaret. "Thank you. For everything." "Don't thank me yet. The hard work is just beginning." The flight to Mexico City left at 6:47 a.m. Elena and Maria sat side by side watching the clouds pass beneath them. Neither of them had slept the night before. Too much excitement, too much anticipation, too much fear. "What if she doesn't recognize me?" Elena said quietly. Maria squeezed her hand. "She'll recognize you. You're her daughter." "I was 25 when I left. I'm 45 now. That's a lifetime." "It doesn't matter. Some things don't change. The love between a mother and child doesn't change." Elena looked at Maria, saw the woman she had become. Strong, brave, wise beyond her years. "When did you get so smart?" "I learned from the best." The plane landed at 11:23 a.m. They rented a car and drove south, following the GPS through countryside that Elena vaguely remembered from her childhood. The roads were rougher now. The towns were smaller, but the mountains in the distance were exactly as she remembered them. They reached the village at 3:15 p.m. It was a small place, maybe 200 people, a church, a market, houses clustered around a central square. Elena parked the car and sat there, unable to move. "Mom?" Maria's voice was gentle. "We're here?" "I know. Do you want me to come with you?" Elena shook her head. "I need to do this alone, just for the first few minutes." She got out of the car and walked toward the address Margaret had given her. Her legs felt like water. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The house was small. White walls, blue door, flowers in the window. Elena knocked. Footsteps inside. Slow. Shuffling. The door opened. And there she was. Lucia Vasquez. 20 years older. 20 years frailer. But the same eyes. The same smile. The same mother Elena had left behind in the burning desert sun. "Mija." The word came out as a whisper. "Elena." Elena couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only stare at the face she had dreamed about for 2 decades. "It's me, Mama. I'm home." Lucia's face crumpled. She reached out with trembling hands and touched Elena's cheek. Her fingers were rough, worn, but warm. So warm. I thought you were dead. They told me you died in the desert. They told me both my girls were gone. Rosa died, but I survived. I made it across. I've been in America all these years. Shh. Why didn't you come back? Why didn't you find me? Elena's tears were falling freely now. I was afraid of the border, afraid of being caught, afraid of dragging you into my problems. But I'm here now. I'm finally here. Lucia pulled her into a fierce embrace. Elena held her mother and sobbed. 20 years of grief, 20 years of guilt, 20 years of longing pouring out all at once. My baby, Lucia whispered. My beautiful baby. You came back to me. They stood in the doorway for a long time holding each other crying, making up for lost years. Finally, Elena pulled back and wiped her eyes. Mama, there's someone I want you to meet. She turned and waved toward the car. Maria got out and walked slowly toward them. Lucia's hand flew to her mouth. Is that your granddaughter? Maria. She's 16 years old. She's going to be a doctor. Maria reached the doorway and stood before her grandmother. For a moment, no one moved. Then Lucia opened her arms and Maria fell into them. My granddaughter, Lucia sobbed. My beautiful granddaughter. I never thought I would see you. Never thought I would hold you. Abuela, Maria whispered. I've heard so many stories about you. The three of them stood there, 3 generations of Vasquez women reunited at last. Elena looked at her mother and her daughter, and for the first time in 20 years, she felt complete. They stayed in Mexico for a week. Elena told her mother everything, about crossing the desert, about burying Rosa, about 20 years of cleaning houses and raising Maria and trying to survive. She told her about Jonathan Whitmore, about Lucas, about digging a baby out of his grave and bringing down a criminal empire. Lucia listened in silence, her eyes wide with wonder and horror. You did all that, she said when Elena finished. My little girl did all that. I had to. Someone had to. Lucia shook her head. You were always the brave one. Even when you were little, you never backed down from anything. I learned it from you, and from Rosa. Lucia's eyes filled with tears at the mention of her younger daughter. I miss her every day, every single day. Me too, Mama, me too. On the last night, Elena sat with her mother on the small porch, watching the sun set over the mountains. You're not staying, Lucia said. It wasn't a question. I can't. I have work to do, people to help. The FBI. Lucia shook her head. My daughter, the FBI agent. Your father would never believe it. Is he? He died. 8 years ago, his heart. Lucia's voice was sad but steady. He never stopped thinking about you. Never stopped hoping you were alive somewhere. Elena felt a fresh wave of grief. Another loss, another person she would never see again. I'm sorry I wasn't here. You're here now, that's what matters. Lucia took her hand. Promise me something. Anything. Come back, as often as you can. Don't let another 20 years pass. Elena squeezed her mother's hand. I promise. I'll come back, as often as I can. And be careful. These people you're fighting, they're dangerous. I know. But you're going to fight them anyway. Elena smiled. Someone has to. Lucia looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then she smiled too. Your sister would be proud of you, Rosa. She would be so proud. Elena thought about Rosa, about the girl who had died in the desert so that Elena could live, about the promise she had made over that unmarked grave. I know, Mama. I think about her every day. 2 weeks after returning from Mexico, Elena started her first case. The Phoenix Network was everything Margaret had described, and worse. Human trafficking, drug smuggling, political corruption reaching all the way to the state legislature. Elena went undercover as a cleaning lady at a luxury resort owned by the network's leader, a man named Victor Reyes. He was smarter than Jonathan, more careful, but he had the same weakness. He didn't see the help. For 3 months, Elena cleaned rooms and listened to conversations and photographed documents. She built relationships with other workers, most of them immigrants, most of them terrified of the men who employed them. She learned their stories. A woman from Guatemala whose husband had been killed by the cartel. A man from Honduras who had crossed 3 countries to give his children a better life. A girl barely 18 who had been trafficked across the border and forced to work in conditions that made Elena sick to her stomach. These were her people, the invisible ones, the forgotten ones, and Elena was going to set them free. The raid happened on a Tuesday night. 50 FBI agents, 20 local police officers who had been vetted by Elena herself. They hit 3 locations simultaneously, arresting Victor Reyes and 27 of his associates. Elena was there when they led Reyes out in handcuffs. He looked at her with confusion. I know you. You cleaned my office." Elena smiled. "I cleaned a lot more than that." "Who are you?" "Someone you should have noticed." The Phoenix case made national news. Elena's face was on every channel. Her name was in every paper. The cleaning lady who had done it again. This time she didn't run from the attention. She used it. She gave interviews, talked about immigration, about the exploitation of workers, about the invisible people who kept America running while America pretended they didn't exist. She became a voice, a symbol, a reminder that the people society overlooked were often the ones who saw the most. 1 year later, Elena stood in the lobby of UCLA Medical Center waiting. The graduation ceremony had just ended. Maria Elena Vasquez, newly minted Doctor of Medicine, was somewhere inside saying goodbye to her classmates. Elena's phone buzzed. A text from Margaret. "Turn on the news, Channel 4. Elena found a television in the waiting area. The screen showed a courthouse in Washington, D.C. A reporter was speaking. In a stunning development, former Detective Marcus Cole has been found dead in his cell at the federal prison in Virginia. Officials say it appears to be suicide, but an investigation is ongoing. Cole was serving a 25-year sentence for corruption and conspiracy." Elena stared at the screen. Cole was dead. The man who had hunted her, threatened her daughter, tried to destroy her life. Gone. She didn't know what to feel. Relief, satisfaction, something darker. "Mom," Elena turned. Maria was walking toward her, still wearing her graduation robe diploma in hand. "Dr. Vasquez," Elena said, forcing a smile. "How does it feel?" "Incredible. Exhausting. Terrifying." Maria laughed. "I can't believe I actually did it. I always knew you would." They walked outside together into the California sunshine. The same sun that had burned down on Elena 25 years ago when she crossed the desert. The same sun that had watched her bury her sister in the sand. But everything else was different. "Mom, I need to tell you something." Elena looked at her daughter. "What is it?" "I got an offer from Doctors Without Borders. They want me to join a team in Central America, providing medical care to migrants, refugees." Maria paused. "People like us." Elena felt tears burning in her eyes. "That's dangerous work." "I know, but someone has to do it right. Isn't that what you always told me?" Elena thought about all the choices that had led to this moment. About Rosa dying in the desert. About Lucas buried in a garden. About the promise she had made to never stop fighting. "When do you leave for 3 weeks?" "Then we have 3 weeks to celebrate, to be together, to prepare." Elena took her daughter's hands. "I'm so proud of you, mija. You have no idea how proud. I learned from the best." They held each other in the sunshine, 2 women who had survived the impossible, who had refused to give up, who had found their purpose in helping others. "There's one more thing," Maria said. "What?" "Victoria called this morning. She wants to see us, both of us. She says Lucas has been asking about you." Elena's heart swelled. Lucas, the baby she had pulled from the ground, the life she had saved. "How old is he now?" "Almost 3. Victoria says he's talking, walking, driving her crazy." Maria grinned. "She says he looks just like her." "I'd like that, to see him, to see them both." "Then let's go. She's waiting." They drove to Victoria's new house in Santa Monica. It was smaller than the mansion, simpler, but it felt warm, lived in, like a home. Victoria met them at the door. She looked different than Elena remembered. Happier, healthier, like someone who had finally escaped a nightmare. "Elena, I'm so glad you came." They embraced. 2 women who had been strangers once, who had become allies, who had survived together. "Where is he?" Elena asked. Victoria smiled and stepped aside. A small boy came running down the hallway. Brown hair, bright eyes, cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mommy said you saved me," Lucas said, looking up at Elena. "When I was a baby, she said you dug me out of the ground." Elena knelt down so she was at his level. "That's right, you were very brave." "I don't remember." "That's okay. You don't have to remember. I remember for both of us." Lucas studied her face with the intensity only a child can muster. Then he reached out and touched her cheek. "Thank you for saving me." Elena felt tears spilling down her face. She didn't try to stop them. You're welcome, Lucas. You're so welcome. The boy threw his arms around her neck and hugged her with all his strength. Elena held him close, this life she had pulled from death, this future she had made possible. When she finally let go, Victoria was crying too. He asks about you all the time, Victoria said. Every time he sees someone cleaning, he says, "Is that the lady who saved me?" He knows you're a hero. We all know it. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who couldn't look away. That's exactly what makes you a hero. They stayed for dinner, talked for hours, laughed, cried, remembered. When it was time to leave, Victoria walked them to the door. What's next for you, Elena? Another case, another network to bring down. Elena thought about the files waiting on her desk, about the leads she was following, about all the invisible people out there who needed someone to fight for them. There's always another case, always more work to do. You're never going to stop, are you? Elena smiled. No, I'm never going to stop. Victoria hugged her one last time. Good. The world needs more people like you. Elena and Maria drove back toward the city as the sun set over the Pacific. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink and purple, like something from a dream. Mom. Yes, mija. Do you ever regret it? Everything that happened? All the danger? All the fear? All the things you had to sacrifice? Elena thought about the question, thought about everything she had lost. Her sister, her homeland, 20 years of her life spent being invisible. But then she thought about everything she had gained, Maria, her mother, her purpose, the knowledge that she had made a difference, that she had saved lives, that she had stood up when everyone else looked away. No, she said finally, I don't regret any of it. Not even the scary parts, especially the scary parts. That's where you find out who you really are. Maria was quiet for a moment. Then she reached over and took Elena's hand. I want to be like you when I grow up. Elena laughed. You're already grown up, and you're already better than me. Not possible. Very possible. You're going to change the world, Maria. I can feel it. They drove in comfortable silence as the city lights began to appear ahead of them. 2 years later, Elena stood in a conference room at FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. The walls were covered with photographs, names, connections, a massive criminal network spanning 5 states. This is it, Margaret said, standing beside her. The biggest one yet. International connections, political protection at the highest levels. If we bring this down, it changes everything. Elena studied the photographs. The faces of men and women who thought they were untouchable, who thought they were above the law, who thought no one could see what they were doing. They were wrong. How long? 6 months, maybe a year. We'll need to place people inside, build trust, gather evidence. Do we have someone who can go undercover? Margaret smiled. I was hoping you'd ask. There's an opening at a resort in Miami. They're looking for cleaning staff. Elena laughed. It was the first time she had laughed about this in a long time. Some things never change. Would you want them to? Elena thought about the question. About the girl who had crossed the desert 25 years ago. About the woman who had cleaned floors for 20 years. About the agent who had brought down networks and saved lives and never stopped fighting. No, she said, I wouldn't change anything. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maria, now stationed in Guatemala, running a clinic for refugees. Saved 3 lives today. Thought of you. Love you, Mom. Elena typed back, proud of you. Love you more. She put the phone away and turned back to the photographs on the wall. So, when do we start? Margaret handed her a file. Welcome to Operation Phoenix Agent Vasquez. Elena opened the file and began to read. Somewhere out there, invisible people were suffering. Powerful people were getting away with murder. The system was broken and most people had given up hope. But Elena Vasquez had never given up hope, had never stopped fighting, had never let the world tell her she was nobody. She had crossed a desert, buried her sister, cleaned floors for 20 years, dug a baby out of his grave, brought down corrupt cops and crooked politicians and criminal networks that stretched across the nation, and she was just getting started. 6 months later, the arrest of Senator William Hartley made headlines around the world. The most powerful politician in Florida brought down by evidence gathered by an undercover FBI agent posing as a cleaning lady. Elena watched the arrest on television from her office in Washington. She had made the arrest herself, had personally put the handcuffs on Hartley while he sputtered about his rights and his lawyers and his powerful friends. None of it mattered. The evidence was overwhelming. Hartley would spend the rest of his life in prison. Her phone rang. Victoria. I just saw the news. Was that you? That was me. Elena, you're amazing. You're absolutely amazing. I had a lot of help. You always say that, but we both know the truth. Victoria paused. Lucas wants to talk to you. He's been watching the news all morning. A moment later, a child's voice came on the line. Elena, is that you? Hi, Lucas. How are you? I saw you on TV. You put handcuffs on a bad guy. That's right, I did. Are you going to keep catching bad guys? Elena smiled. As long as there are bad guys to catch. Good, because I want to be like you when I grow up. I want to help people, like you helped me. Elena felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back. You can be anything you want to be, Lucas. Anything at all. I know, but I want to be like you. After the call ended, Elena sat in her office looking at the photographs on her desk. Maria in her doctor's coat. Lucia in front of her little house in Mexico. Rosa, forever 17, smiling in a faded picture from another lifetime. And one more photograph. A baby covered in dirt cradled in Elena's bleeding arms. The moment that had changed everything. Someone knocked on her door. Margaret. New case just came in. Network operating out of Houston. Looks big. Elena stood and straightened her jacket. Let's get to work. They walked together toward the briefing room. Elena, can I ask you something? Of course. After everything you've been through, everything you've accomplished, what keeps you going? What makes you get up every morning and keep fighting? Elena thought about the question. Thought about Rosa's last words in the desert. Thought about Lucas's tiny chest rising and falling in that wooden box. Thought about all the invisible people out there who needed someone to see them. Because someone has to, she said. Because if people like me don't fight people like them, win. And I made a promise a long time ago to my sister that I would never stop. That I would keep going no matter what. Margaret nodded slowly. And have you kept that promise? Elena smiled. Every single day. 1 year later. Elena stood at a podium in the White House receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in the United States given to an immigrant cleaning lady who had changed the course of American justice. The president shook her hand and placed the medal around her neck. Agent Vasquez, on behalf of a grateful nation, thank you for your service. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for showing us what one person can accomplish when they refuse to give up. The applause was deafening. Elena looked out at the crowd. Maria was there crying with pride. Victoria was there holding Lucas's hand. Margaret was there smiling. Agents she had worked with. People she had saved. Survivors who had come to say thank you. And somewhere invisible but present Rosa. Always Rosa. The sister who had died so that Elena could live. The voice that had whispered, "Don't stop," in the burning desert sun. Elena touched the medal around her neck and spoke into the microphone. I don't deserve this honor alone. I share it with every invisible person who has ever been overlooked. Every immigrant who crossed a border to build a better life. Every worker who cleaned floors and washed dishes and was treated like they didn't exist. Every survivor who refused to stay silent. This medal belongs to all of us. She paused, gathering herself. 25 years ago, I was a girl who had just buried her sister in the Arizona desert. I had nothing. I was nobody. The world told me I would never matter, that I would never be seen, that I would never make a difference. Her voice grew stronger. But I'm here today to tell you that they were wrong. Every person matters. Every voice counts. Every invisible life has value. And sometimes the people nobody sees are the ones who change the world. She looked directly at the camera. So if you're out there right now feeling invisible, feeling hopeless, feeling like no one cares, I want you to know something. I see you. I was you. And your story isn't over. It's just beginning. The applause shook the room. That night, Elena sat alone in her hotel room looking at the medal in her hands. Her phone rang, a number she didn't recognize. She answered anyway. Elena Vasquez. Who is this? My name doesn't matter. What matters is that my daughter is missing. The police won't help. The FBI won't help. No one will help. But I saw you on television today, and I thought maybe you would listen. Maybe you would see us. Elena sat up straighter. Tell me everything. She listened for an hour, wrote notes, asked questions. When the call ended, she was already planning her next move. The medal sat on the nightstand. The applause had faded. The ceremony was over, but the work was just beginning. Elena Vasquez picked up her phone and made a call. Margaret, I need a team. We have work to do. Because that's who she was now. Not a cleaning lady, not an invisible immigrant, not a victim. She was Elena Vasquez, FBI agent, fighter, survivor, voice for the voiceless. And she would never stop, not until every invisible person was seen. Not until every voice was heard, not until justice was done. She had crossed a desert and buried her sister and spent 20 years being nobody. She had dug a baby out of a grave and brought down an empire and changed the course of history. And she was just getting started. The world was full of monsters who thought they could hide in the shadows. Full of powerful people who thought they were above the law. Full of invisible victims who had given up hope. But Elena had a message for all of them. The shadows weren't safe anymore. Someone was watching. Someone was fighting. Someone who had been invisible her whole life had learned the most important lesson of all. The people nobody sees are often the ones who see everything. And sometimes one person is all it takes to change the world. Elena Vasquez was that person, and her story would never end. Because as long as there was injustice, she would fight it. As long as there was evil, she would expose it. As long as there were invisible people who needed a voice, she would speak for them. That was her promise. That was her purpose. That was her legacy. Not the medal around her neck, not the headlines in the papers, not the trials and the convictions and the networks brought down. Her legacy was simpler than that. Her legacy was hope. Hope for every person who had ever been told they didn't matter. Hope for every voice that had ever been silenced. Hope for every invisible life that had ever been overlooked. Elena Vasquez had been all of those things once. Now she was something else. She was proof that anyone could rise, that anyone could fight, that anyone could win, and that sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't the one with money or status or power. Sometimes the most powerful person is the one with courage, the one who refuses to look away, the one who digs when everyone else walks past, the one who never, ever stops. Elena Vasquez had never stopped, and she never would.